Roll call. Mayor Racy,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Brock,
Here.
Councilman Dowd,
Here.
Councilwoman Was,
Here.
Councilman Clearman,
Here.
Councilman Mulholland,
Here.
Councilman Quarles.
Here.
There is a quorum present. Tonight's agenda, discussion, city council goals.
Okay. Well, start off this. A number of months ago, all of the council got together separately with myself and at the time Mayor Pro Tem Porter, and we talked about goals. I know Councilman Quarles, you haven't had a chance to be part of that yet, but we had been working on this for quite a while, and then we got into the budget and different things, and we just never got back to having a discussion about the goals that were put together. I think this is a really good idea, something that we should be doing on a regular basis, something that will help the city manager be able to make sure that all the council people feel heard and how to direct the city in the way that we all want that to be. So I think is it the red folder? Yes. There's a red folder that everybody has that has the goals that were provided, kind of narrowed them down because there were some things that kind of work together, and I guess what we'll just do is go through this, and the Mayor Pro Tem is going to take some notes for me, for all of us, trying to just keep track of what we're talking about tonight too. But just trying to see where everybody kind of sits with stuff, because there's no way that we can accomplish all these different things that are in front of us. So it's very difficult to say, hey, here's all these goals, but we can't succeed in any of these things. The one positive thing is there has been the things that came in our goals meetings that have been getting accomplished, even though we haven't had, things have been going on behind the scenes. The administration's been working on this, and things have been getting done. And so, I mean, I think that there's certain things that are goals, certain things that are policies, and just some things that just make sense that help give direction and be able to help the city manager and the administration all understand where we're trying to go, so we're all kind of rowing in the same direction instead of people rowing opposite of each other, trying to get us uphill, I guess I don't even know if that's the right way to say it, but just trying to get everybody working and rowing in the same direction. So I guess to start off with tonight, and who is on the Policies and Procedures Committee? So I'm going to be sending over to you something after this. The Mayor Pro Tem put together some ideas on how to further do this in the future, and I want to take that document and send it to you guys to review it, and then possibly implement that as a way to move forward with things. But I wanted to have everybody's input on that before we just started going full blast onto something. So be looking out for that email to the three of you guys. I would just wanted to make you aware of that. So I guess we'll start off with the first section, which is it's a review of suggested goals as of ongoing complete of 2023. And one of the goals was hiring of one additional ordinance officer, which has been completed, we saw that as we were working on the budget, but that was something that we all talked about, and the administration heard that's where we wanted to go. Pursuing the sale of Seawin Park, Angelo DeMario Park, in the former Vandenberg School property, and that's still ongoing. That's something that I know that Lori and Mike will be working with those guys with Infinity Homes as they're completing the development that they've been doing on Kiwanis Park, which is, again, I think they're on the last house over there, and so we're seeing that the new development happening and the potential of more, which is pretty exciting. a major cleanup and fix of Atwood Park, which the process has started, but there's a lot more going. I don't know if that's something we want to end up talking about, or if that's another time, because we're going to have to end up talking about at some point the what to do with the pavilion. City manager, do you think we should talk about the pavilion at this point, or just kind of leave that? For some reason, I was looking at Atwood and thinking Gowdy. Sorry about that.
Was it on your list? I would probably stick to what you have.
Yeah, I was seeing Atwood and I was thinking Gowdy. It was just, sorry about that.
No, that's okay. I was a little confused.
Yeah, me too. Joining the Michigan Municipal League, which we have now done, the one thing I'd like to see that we all start trying to find out more information about that and make sure that we're utilizing that membership, which I have a feeling we'll be using more soon. But I know that there's different things that are available to us, and we should just make sure that we're taking advantage of that, and our staff is doing that. I know the Mayor Pro Tem Porter, when he was on council, he used to watch sessions quite a bit. I don't know, has any of the other council members used anything with MML so far? Mayor Pro Tem Brock has? I've done a little bit, but not much. No, but, so that's something to go to the MichiganMunicipalLeague.com, and I would recommend that that all you guys, get more familiar with the Michigan Municipal League. Lisa, are the staff using Michigan? Have we been utilizing that so far as much as SEMCOG, or?
I think personnel has used it quite a bit.
Personnel's been using it the most? Okay. If there's questions, I know this part's going to be the easiest part of the whole night. Talking about things we've got done. Having contractors clean up leaves at certain parks in the fall and ongoing. Is there more than, I'm familiar with 2 parks. Is there more than that, or is it just the? That's the Rotary one and Atwood. And those were the 2 parks that we had the most complaints about, that the leaves blow and go into yards, especially over at Rotary One. Every time we would have a picnic over there, I have residents that would talk to me about it, so I don't know how many of you guys have had that same experience, but did they have no trees in their yards, and all that they go into their yards, and so that's going to be something that I know that neighborhood's going to really appreciate, being able to deal with that this year. So that's very cool. The lead line replacement, we're all familiar with that we're in the process of doing that, and that's going to be something that's going to change the lives of a lot of people in our community, and something that our administration worked their tails off to make sure that happened, and very appreciative. Is there any updates with that? I mean, is it still October? Have we heard anything more? Pretty much the same. Adding new chairs to the citizen section of the council chambers, which you should be maintaining. Those are right in front of you, so you can see that. That's actually been, I think, really nice. I mean, yep, well, thank you. You can stand and do that. But I think these little things are become big things as we multiply some of these things. And I know that they've worked in freshening up the hallway and improving that also, and been working on also removing unused ordinances that are no longer used or make sense ongoing for the city, and so I know that that's a continual, ongoing process. So the second part is the discussion for goals for 2023, 24. And I guess the first part is,
Mayor, if I
yes.
can I just
Sure.
interject one thing? Going back to lead line before we go on to the next
Yes.
category. I know this was brought up, I believe, at resident comments last meeting on what's the plan. I think that's also, I think everybody sitting here would like to, I know that now that we got the financial part, now we can put in place a plan that A, identifies all the lines, B, starts to replace the lines in the phases and whatnot. And I know Mr. Queen can certainly speak to, between Mr. Queen and Mr. Byton, they know the vendors that they've got in line, because this guy, I believe it's gonna be a vendor program, not done solely by DPW.
yeah, we have,
I mean, if we could just speak to lead lines a little bit before what's the next step in lead lines? That's, to me, in this section, that's the most important one in that grouping that's ongoing.
yeah, we can, Mr. Biden.
So I just take
talk to us
that
about it.
chance
Yeah.
to kind of update the community as we're on TV and, you know,
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we have approached Stantec to put together a proposal for us to do the engineering for this project. They're gonna do it in 2 phases because we have a pretty good idea of the amount of lead services we have, not completely certain. So the first year, the calendar year of 2024, we're gonna replace all of our known lead services and investigate all the rest of the services in the city. The second year will be a separate contract with Stantec when we know what the remainder of the project will look like. And we'll come back to you a year from now. So a proposal will be coming soon for Stantec to help us with the engineering, inspection of that, for 2024. And then next year, about this time, there'll be a separate proposal for 2025 to finish off the rest of the lead services.
yeah, I mean, because I think everybody would agree that we have an idea, but there's gonna be circumstances where there's people outside the assumption doesn't fit the reality.
We're gonna
That's-
be
I just
working
wanna Be able
aggressively.
to have a plan for those guys.
We're gonna be working aggressively next year, not only to take care of the knowns, but to find the unknowns in the rest of the city to the best of our ability.
Yeah, I mean, if we can find out over the winter and come into the spring with being able to hit with the 90th percentile, that'd be great, in my
I
opinion.
think that we're not gonna be able to understand what they are in the winter. I think that, we're going to, while the plan, at least the tentative plan, is going to be, while the weather is good, we're going to be aggressively hitting every lead service we can. When the weather is marginal, we're gonna be going to every home or working with DPW to test different areas to really isolate where the issues are throughout that 2024 construction season. And then we'll be able to get after the rest of them in 2025. That's the tentative plan.
So if I can just ask a question on this topic, because you and I have chatted about, I think it's Mildred Street. That was before we even got approval, so the city was already doing lead line or planning lead line replacements along Mildred, correct? And then
Yes.
the money hit.
So what we were told is when we wanted to apply for grants for lead services, we'd have a much better opportunity to get a grant if we were already trying to make progress ourselves rather than to just sit and wait for money to come. And I think that was part of the strategy, and that's part of how we were able to capture some of this money, because we were actively showing, hey, we understand that we need to do this, we're working on it, and then a grant came alongside of us to help us out. Yes, I answered your.
Yeah, I mean, I just would like to see this become not a regular item on the agenda, but a planned item, maybe twice a year, quarterly, something like that, that it comes to us on an update on where we at with this, so we can, get, the community knows.
Sure.
Thank you.
Is there a question, any questions?
Not on the lead line. On the Silver Parks, were we also looking at Harry Ranch and J.C.?
Yes.
So actually, yes, Mr. Clareman, there are several parks that we had the opportunity to sell. I just started this week looking, I actually have some opportunities for us to sell some parks, so I'd be happy to bring that to the council As you know, that would go through the Property Disposition Committee first, but without letting the cat out of the bag, I do have some opportunities for that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Mike, I had a question I was gonna ask on the lead lines. So, how many lead lines do you think realistically that you guys are gonna be able to accomplish? I mean, because you have to get staff, I believe that there's DPW workers that have to be out there to do some part of that.
We don't have the staff to do, we had a project for 80 lead lines, and we ended up doing 160 this year. I would say that overtaxed the DPW. And in this next year, we're hoping to do 400 in the construction season of 2024. We're going to be asking Stan Tech to supply the people that we need to get that project done. So that's going to be done largely by them.
So we won't have to utilize our own DPW like we
Yeah, our
did
own
in the last
staff.
time.
We're obviously, engineering is going to be involved a fair amount. DPW is going to be also involved a very fair amount. But it's going to give us some relief to get at some of the other things that we need to do that we haven't had a chance to get at right now.
Okay. Yes, hold on, Mike.
With Stantec being involved, are they gonna carry insurance for any more flooded basements or that kind of thing? Or will it be on us?
Base and flood insurance for basements would be our MMRMA, I would think.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Thank you. Any other questions on this first section before we move on?
No, I just want to say, I think it's great. I mean, it's always nice to see some things completed and moving along and, not everything in the future. So this is fantastic. There's a lot of positive things already moving along.
No, I agree.
I'd also like to add something quick.
Yes.
For the council, that this fits all the requirements to have something be called a policy, have something be called a goal, and then the internal workings of the city. So this is a nice model for us all to keep an eye on and to learn from as we go forward, creating the work that we're going to gather from this material. Thank you.
Anyone else? Guess we'll go into section number 2, which is the financial revenue streams. The first part was payment in lieu of taxes. And I don't know if there's someone that was able to talk about that for us.
Good evening again. So payment in lieu of taxes, that is something that generally becomes before us through a housing project that is HUD-related. I know back a while ago, there was some conversation of looking to see if some of our nonprofit organizations would be look towards paying us taxes in lieu of, or paying us money in lieu of their taxes. I don't know if that would happen, but I know there were other communities that had explored that. So say, for example, churches or nonprofit organizations that don't pay taxes on their properties. I believe there was one community that went to all their nonprofits and said, hey, the city is hurting. Would you be willing to look at doing some type of donation in lieu of taxes? We've had a couple of pilots here in the city of Wayne. As you know, recently you've dissolved a couple of pilots. So if that was the will of the council, that you had the administration approach the churches or some of our other nonprofits, certainly we could do that, but obviously they are not obligated to pay taxes.
Mayor, if I may?
Yes.
I mean, a couple things from an education level. What services are each of the churches and nonprofits and everything benefiting from a city capacity that we're not seeing financial? Is this removal of trash? Is this the lighting, or what are we talking
I'll
about?
give you the big example. One of our pilots is probably the highest called police and fire response area. And they are on a pilot.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all for aggressively looking at this as an option and going to our churches and our nonprofits, but the first thing is we have to lay it out in an educational level, like this is what you're receiving, and for your business to be, it is a business, you know, in lieu of your neighbor who's probably nonprofit, they're paying, you know, this dollar amount, and they're receiving this level of services. I think this needs to be looked at, from our lawyer level. Is this something that we can go forward if we get a green light? I think that we should look at this as a group and present this to everybody equally, no matter what their where they're at in the city. If they're nonprofit, we hit them all up.
I don't disagree.
That's just my opinion.
Thank you for talking about this. I appreciate it. I have no specifics about it. I just wanted to ask the city manager a question, so please don't go away yet, because it has
No,
to
I'm
do with
staying.
what we're doing this evening for the goals. So now we have something that sounds like someone's interested in doing it, and I think it's a good idea too, especially if the economic director believes that this is a good way to go. So I would like to learn more about it. So from this goal session, what would we do here now, other than record that fact that we're interested in it? Is there anything else that needs to be done right now?
The city can certainly provide you in writing more clarification to the council on any items that you're seeking or, information to move forward. So that's, I think, would be a good first step.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
If I could. So piggybacking on what the city manager said, we'd have to look at the organizations that are non-tax-paying organizations. We'd have to look at their police and fire calls, because truly that's what it is with them, are their police and fire calls. Those are the services, in my opinion, that they would be receiving that are costing the city money. So we would have to do a study and look and say, is it even worth it? I mean, I know for a fact that we do have one building, probably, if not two, probably one, that does take advantage of our police and fire services, that they are only paying payment in lieu of taxes. So it would be a benefit for that group to pay taxes. However, they have HUD housing in there. So are you going to do that to all those residents that live in there that have Section 8 housing? So this is something that absolutely could be explored. It's going to take a lot of work on the administration's part. But there probably may be a few organizations, maybe a few, that it would be better if they were paying taxes. But I think the ones that are not paying taxes are not using as many city services as the ones that are on the pilot program.
Can I do one more thing? This is also to the city manager again. Thank you so much for that excellent
You're welcome.
explanation. So now that we have this, and obviously it's going to take a lot of work to do, we wouldn't go directly to the economic development director, right? We'd send it through the city manager's office to decide what was going to happen next. Is that how would we, I'm sorry if I'm jumping ahead to the end.
No, that's okay. I
but-
think the goals tonight is a directive from the council on what it is you want us to focus on.
Okay.
So that directive would come to the council to me, and then I would work with the appropriate staff to make that happen.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, is there any other questions from council?
I'm sorry if I've missed something, but what are you talking about by pilot program?
So the pilot program it's a program that's called Payment in Lieu of Taxes. So it's typically developments that participate with HUD, that take lower income residents in. You might remember the Atwood Gardens project at Vinoy and Annapolis that was coming in. That was going to be a HUD project. And in order for them to get their funding, they were going to not be paying taxes to the city of Wayne. So it's an equation, and how it works is they take the amount of rent they're collecting versus their expenses versus, different factors, and then they come up with a dollar amount that they want to pay the city of Wayne. That project did not work out because they could not make their numbers work. We do have that program at Wayne Towers. So Wayne Towers, it's an equation. How much income do they have versus how many residents versus what other utilities, and they determine the dollar amount they're going to pay us every year.
And is there a way to, for a place like that where maybe they are getting more calls, is there a way to get them to pay taxes? I mean, how do we actually go about doing that? Because they are nonprofit, correct? They're HUD?
No, well, I wouldn't say they're a nonprofit. I would say they're participating in the pilot program and because of HUD. But I mean, okay, let's just use an example, our churches.
Right,
So our churches do not pay taxes.
right?
Churches and some of our housing developments. How many calls are going to our churches? How much of our public safety resources are the churches using? Probably not a lot. Now, Newberry Square used to be a pilot program. As you know, we're dissolving that. We all know the resources that are expended at that building. So that's the big thing we would need to look at is, you know, we just renewed the pilot for Wayne Towers not long ago. So I don't know how many businesses would be willing to participate in a pilot program, but if that's the will of the council, certainly the administration would be happy to look into that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So, I don't want to get too far in the weeds on this, but like with some of that, like if somebody's getting benefit of garbage or parking lot, or would you individually do that to each business? Or, I mean.
We'd have to look at all those factors,
you'd have to
Mayor.
look-
Yes,
so
you are
you'd have to almost
correct.
look at each one of them to
You
kind
would,
of see
Mayor.
what, how many there are.
Garbage, police calls, exactly. We would factor all those items in, that they are receiving these city services and not paying anything for them. That is correct.
So what about and I don't know if they're tax-free or not, the senior housing, some of the other senior housing that is like senior, what do you call it? We have some on Vinoy Road, they're assisted livings and,
No, those people pay taxes.
but they pay tax.
They don't have a pilot program. American House,
Or
Maple Manor,
those types of places, yeah.
those
But
people
but
do
they
not have a
take up
pilot
lot of-
program.
They
Those
take more
people pay
resources than what their
services.
taxes would.
They pay taxes.
So,
Those people are paying actual taxes.
but like, Corewell Health does not pay taxes,
It does not.
or RISA doesn't pay taxes,
They do not.
or
The schools.
the schools that are, so there's those, that one section
That is correct.
on how, so that would be a big section that is not,
Right, and we'd have to work with the city attorney to determine, can we
If it's
even look at the
possible.
schools?
yeah, I think schools would be difficult, but
But Corewell, hospitals, things of that nature, can we look at those things? That would be something we'd have to have the city attorney answer.
or maybe at least some city services, because they're being provided that and they're not paying towards that,
Correct.
so then maybe there's something.
If I may, I know that you said at the top is police and fire, but like, the hospital enjoys the road being cleared for them by DPW, the sidewalks being cleared by them, the lighting that's there, all of that, it's a lot of real estate. in
Those
that
things would all
capacity.
factor in, Councilman.
And then their neighbor pays taxes, which is their far neighbor, which is Hype, right?
No.
No, Hype doesn't pay
So-
taxes.
So what I
Lakeland
get
does
is
not
a
pay
whole
taxes.
block right there
Is tax exempt.
is a nonprofit,
The Senior
no
Alliance,
taxes.
the whole entire,
Whole
The
whole
county,
block
everything
right
is.
there.
Yes, sir.
But it's not just police and fire, it is I mean, granted, certain areas would be less than DPW, but DPW, so I don't know who magically picks up the garbage. Do we go to every church and pick up everybody's
I
garbage?
think a lot of them have dumpsters and they have private pickup.
Right, so we don't, I mean, they know that, we don't know it. So I'm trying to get a category of what services, convenient services there are. And some places, a church in an area, but a church in an area like the St. Mary's, the 1 and 2, I mean, they're on Michigan Avenue, their sidewalks are cleared for them, right? And
They would clear their own sidewalks.
so every instance is different, and it's a matter, I think the first thing to do is get the list and order them up and go at the top with the ones that are already happening, and then we can sort through the ones that are not and see where they fit.
That's correct.
So do you?
I think it's a great thing to look at. It allows us to look at our community in a way that we don't generally do that. And I think that we've been great partners with all these groups. Some have deeper pockets than others.
Do we have a number of how many nonprofits there are?
I do not.
Okay, maybe that's something where we.
It's not even so much nonprofits, it's gonna be tax exempt
Tax exempt
entities.
for properties,
Yes. Because I will give you an example, the Knights of Columbus,
they pay taxes.
they pay taxes because their property is owned by the building corporation. So you would think there would be tax-free, but they're not.
Right,
They pay taxes.
right. So you have to look at each.
So we'd have to really work with finance and get that list.
Do we have, how any kind of idea how heavy a lift this is? I don't know if it's you or the city.
Oh, it's gonna be huge, but if that's the direction of the council, we're happy to do it, Mayor.
I mean, just so the council has an idea, I mean, the cost for us to kind of know the benefit to how much time it's gonna take. I mean, is
If
there
I
any
can,
idea?
it would be really hard to say because it's gonna take the assessing department, the finance department, myself, so it's gonna involve 3 different departments to actually get the information. And the city attorney. So, like I said, though, if that's the direction of the council, we're happy to do it.
Is this a direction we want to do as the I mean, I don't know how to direct so that they know.
I will tell you,
Support's
if
there
it's
to
a
do it or
directive
not.
you want to give, we're happy to do it, but I'm going to tell you, we are going to find,
There's other things that you can't.
no, we're going to find that the entity with the pilot program is the one that's abusing the system the most. And what are you going to do about that? But it does not hurt to look into it.
So I'm assuming the next step at some point, we would, within the body of the council, with 2 people that want it to be on an agenda, we could have this put on an agenda in the future and as an agenda item.
I mean, do we need to vote on this, or is this up, what's the process that you're thinking?
There's a couple ways you can handle this. I mean, other cities have done it where you prioritize based on vote. You say this one got 4 votes, this one got 3 votes, and it kind of helps us to prioritize from the top down what had the most support all the way down to the lower hanging fruit.
Okay.
I think that's the best way to do it, and so we have some direction moving forward.
I mean, should we be voting on these tonight for you?
I wouldn't think so.
No, you can.
Just asking how do we move this forward?
I don't know what your council.
We might be ready to do that, yeah.
Session and get back to you, but I think you should do everything out in the open, certainly. You don't
Yeah.
want to do anything in email or things like that.
Right,
And I would be happy to answer any questions from any of the council members before you make a decision.
okay.
So you can vet it out and take some time to think about it.
Yeah, I think
Before
we
you
need to
exhaust city
circle back to this
resources.
and probably do a presentation with the facts, and then we target from there.
That would be good. That's a great idea.
Again, it's just a matter of, between administration and council planning on putting us on the agenda with the lead time and to get everything in order, and we'll go from there. I think it's important to shine a light on this element. It's something that I know past people on council have talked about. I think we haven't really seen it through to the point. It is great that we have a pilot program that's active to look at and use as a beta test to the other
I'll give you an
factors.
example.
Yeah.
What they're paying versus their police and fire calls versus their services. Yeah, it's a great idea, Councilman.
Okay, thank you.
Are we able to go to the next item? Everybody good? Okay. This next item I kind of feel uncomfortable even talking about because it's kind of a weird item. And it's not my item, but just throwing it out there. So
Who doesn't want more tickets?
more speeding tickets and ordinance tickets written is the subject. So, sure, yeah. And I'm not giving that directive.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem Brock, members of council. So about speeding tickets, traffic enforcement is 100% part of the job of law enforcement. It is, that's part of our job. But, we're limited by certain factors. One of the number one factors we're limited by is staffing. Our officers are on 12-hour shifts. It's rare for an officer working 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. It's rare for an officer to get out before 8:30, 9 o'clock because they're writing reports. So just being frank, sometimes there's just not enough time in the day. I've authorized officers to come in on their days off and write tickets on overtime. Officers do that regularly, and officers do conduct traffic enforcement during the day, when they have time, and we direct them to problem areas and things like that. But that being said, quite frankly, I'm strongly against the use of traffic enforcement as a revenue source. That is not the point of traffic enforcement. I disagree with the concept of police officers being, tax collectors. When we write tickets, it should be for community safety reasons. We have those that electronic traffic sign out there, and we find out where there's problems areas, and we target our enforcement there, or we target where we get maybe like complaints from residents and things like that. So we're doing the best we can.
Mayor, if I may just.
Yes.
I'll be first to say, as a young lad that has grown up in this area, I have successfully gotten a ticket in all the areas that generally you get a ticket in Wayne, that being by State Wayne, by St. Mary's, and on the eastbound side of Michigan Avenue. I've been greeted both by Wayne Police and Westland Police along Michigan Avenue.
I find that very hard to believe, sir.
I blame it on the car directly. But to bring up a point, I do think in somewhere in the priorities and goals, I really would like to see us, get to the sidebar, what you kind of talked about, what I think is an important element, the technology that's out there now. The fact that we have one sign that gives us the data, but we need more signs. I would like to see, I think everybody here would like to see signs in the areas where the schools are at and along the main streets that are abused the most, such as, the streets at Annapolis, it's a racing course.
And I would add too, we did ask for one additional sign in this upcoming budget year, and we're getting a few estimates, trying to figure out what the best option is for the department. But I'll be bringing that before council, certainly before the end of the year, for at least one more.
And I don't know where Westland, if Westland paid for them, or the school district paid for them, you can't go by a school in Westland that doesn't have a sign on both sides that tells you to slow down or that you're doing okay.
I have brought that up with meetings with the school district about going in with us on those signs. It's been an ongoing discussion. We're resuming our monthly meetings with the school district here in September.
Yeah.
Yes.
Lori, didn't we have this discussion about those signs in Westland? I asked about the solar signs with or was it you? I had it with somebody. Didn't somebody help you or somebody help get those signs for Westland, the speeding ticket,
Did they do that through a grant sheet?
was that a grant that was written?
No, it's through the
I believe they just purchased it through capital outlay. Now, the permanent solar signs are not really any more than the portable ones. They're both like in the $3,000 to $4,000 neighborhood. I'm sure our friends at DPW would help us install them if we were to get a permanent one.
Because I do know Howe Road, you and I have talked about it, Howe Road is like a racetrack from Van Born to Michigan Avenue. I mean, as I said before, we've even had Wayne County out there taking care of that. And, I agree with you. I think we need more signage.
That gives us the beat back.
Right.
Not just ones that tell them to slow down.
Correct.
We want one that gives
And
us
I would add too, quite often residents will express concerns, and we'll get the sign out there, and maybe the problem isn't quite as extensive as people might think. But if residents are concerned about speeding in their neighborhood, by all means, reach out to us. We have a list of areas to focus on. Again, I don't necessarily believe in just writing tickets for revenue purposes.
I live at one of those areas, and I've counted how much time a police officer has to sit at the corner of my street in Annapolis, and it's less than 6 minutes before someone flies through the stop sign. So, I mean, it is what it is. I think the technology part is the best way to start, and that may be somewhere else in the goals list.
From my perspective, stop signs and red light violations are much more serious than speeding violations.
Yeah, thank you.
They tend to lead to injury-related traffic crashes.
Sorry, I didn't mean to step on you there, Mr. Clearman.
Yeah, Councilman Clearman?
I hear what you're saying about using them as a revenue source. I'd be concerned about writing them for safety reasons. If somebody's speeding, they're more potential to have an accident, aren't they?
Absolutely.
I mean, if not, why have the speed limit at all?
I think that's his point.
I wasn't suggesting we don't enforce traffic violations, Councilman. I was just saying the job of the police department is not to be a tax collector.
Right.
We should absolutely. It's very clearly part of our job, traffic enforcement. I just believe that we should focus our traffic enforcement on problem areas where we've either had complaints from residents, high rates of injury, traffic crashes, or some of the data leads us to believe that there's a problem there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't think that the police department either should be used to generate income. I do think that this is, we've brought up some serious issues about speeding along Van Born and things like that, and the folks that are coming in from the west. And then I think this gives the council an opportunity to use some of our connections and talk with other people, write letters, encourage traffic safety. And it may sound like very simple, but it's a lot of work to do. Perhaps we could approach our neighbors and even talk to the county perhaps, because I think there was a mention briefly about a speed or traffic, traffic review for an area, right? The speed that people going by and the number of, and I think
know
the
that
county
police
might do
do
that. The police, and I wouldn't want to.
They perform that.
I'm sure, but then Van Born's got the traffic from the other side, and I don't know if you guys would do that. I'm not trying to.
No,
get
you're not
away from
stepping
you,
on my
but
toes.
If they can help, we can ask them.
So a couple things. So it's, they would do a traffic study on an area to reevaluate. The state police is in charge of that. And I'll be really frank, if the state police does it, with the state police's current philosophy about speed, if we did a traffic study on, and some of the areas you're describing, the speed limit would be raised. The speed limit is based on the 85th percentile speed, meaning 85% of the vehicles are going this speed. And in all the different traffic studies we've done with those speed signs, the 85th percentile speed is always below the current speed limit. So the speed limit would be raised if we did a traffic study.
Thank you for bringing that out. And I just remembered also a few years ago, I worked with the state police and collected some information on intersections along Van Born about the incidents of traffic accidents and things like that. And it was difficult to extract the material for them because they're very busy themselves, so.
So that, not to get off in the weeds, but the Van Born and Wayne, that's more of an engineering problem, as far as how the intersection is designed, as far as speeds certainly contribute to but it's an engineering issue in my.
Sorry to get off track there.
And as far as the speed signs, there are grants available. The AAA has a safety grant we've applied for but did not receive.
Any other council thoughts on this? Got a couple ideas, and this just throwing these out, this might be helpful. If we come up with the price of what these units cost, maybe we go to each one of the schools, even talk to the PTA, get the parents. I'm assuming that they still have active groups like that, and maybe the parents would be interested in raising funds to be able to make sure their kids are safe in their schools, and we might be able to fund them that way, if we can't come up with a solution that we
Sure,
can.
we can certainly bring that.
I think we've been very successful in the past of being creative and finding ways to make things happen, with stuff like that, so.
Chief, didn't we provide Dr. Dignan with a number already, a couple of times?
Yes, I know I've personally told Dr. Dignan about the signs. I believe.
Yeah, I've mentioned it to him too.
We could, but he's a busy man. We could certainly bring it up again in September when those meetings resume.
Yeah, well, I'm saying around him, that maybe it's each one of those schools where you have the parents are the ones pushing it for us. There might be another avenue,
Not gonna hurt to ask.
so, I mean, it may be just a different direction than the way we've maybe approached it. I've always thought it's the same thing. We've been approaching the schools directly, but maybe there's other ways, other nonprofits that may be willing to raise. I mean, and there may be other goals that we have, there may be ways to do it. I mean,
And
not
that
necessarily-
AAA safety grant, you can apply every year or something, so we could certainly give that another shot.
Okay. What about, because I know the Mayor Romulus talked to me about, I think they're getting these, and I remember in Chicago, they had these cameras that would take and give tickets. Are those types of things?
Those are not illegal in the state of Michigan.
They're not now? Because he was talking about that, they were talking about doing.
Yeah, there
something
was,
that way.
I'm not positive, and the city manager might know, I'm not positive where that is, but there was something in committee or something about that, but I don't believe the
It
governor
didn't
signed it.
go anywhere? Okay. Okay, any other questions on this topic? Okay, Mike?
Thank you, Mayor, Council. So on the ordinance end, we did add an ordinance officer at the beginning of July. And so we are able to double the amount of violations and tickets that are generated simply because there are that many or more that need to be addressed. When we only had one ordinance officer, we could only do X. Now we can do 2X. So there's no targeting any individual. There's no trying to be punitive to people unnecessarily. There's just a sense that we have more opportunity to do what the residents and the council, rest of the administration have asked us to do, as to raise the bar a little bit and have more opportunity enforcement with 2 officers. So there is an increase right now, but it's just directly proportional to the number of full-time equivalents we have.
Okay. Council questions? Mike, I'm sorry.
Sorry, I should have waved at you before you left. This is not directly related to the ordinance, which is given it afterwards, right, given the ticket afterwards. And I was wondering if we could perhaps in the future discuss as a team some means to have inspections carried out. And I don't know if Mr. Byton's team would do it, or some of the other departments might have opportunity to do these sorts of inspections. And I'm not sure what's going on right now. They may be already taking place, where the things are signed off on an annual basis for whatever needs to be checked out, heading off problems. I just wanted to mention that for the team, that perhaps we could think about that in the future.
And if I can just add one thing, now that we have 2 officers in place, which takes the burden off the one to basically always be out campaigning and doing things, I love our weekly report that we get by each department. I'd love to see that we just start to see metrics from, not just high-level metrics, not detail issues, but how many issued, how many resolved, how many, that kind of thing, both in the category of residential versus even like things like top 5 issues that are chronic or whatever, just so we know. And that way, it also allows that department to grow and understand what the real problems are, where we're having ordinance issues. And the more we know the details, the more we can speak on behalf of the city as a collective group.
Yes.
I have 2 things. One's for you. How are we doing with the online thing? Is that working out? Are we able to get through those faster with the second ordinance officer?
So those tie together a little bit. So I'd like to say, just because we added a second ordinance officer, doesn't mean that we're able to catch up still, right? We used to have 3.5 ordinance officers at one time. And so we are doing everything we can to keep going. So that's lagging a little bit. And yes, reports would be good. I don't know if you want them monthly, quarterly, annually.
I just want to look at a high level and then kind of micro it down, eventually get it down to a micro, cosm of things. But I think knowing, one thing is request monthly electronically. And then, that tells you, because we don't know how many you get on that thing. I have a feeling I know how many you get on our street, but, I can't speak for the whole city.
So a lot of our work is going out to people's locations, but a lot of our work is on the phone, working with those people once we've been out there. So we've broken it down to, we have anywhere from like 3.1 to 3.3 contacts with people, whether it's a combination of field and phone, to finish a issue that was brought up.
Right.
And so we have a certain number of those a year. I think at study session, or at the budget session, we had a list, but that would have been for the whole year. So I don't know if we want to break that down and do that twice a year, quarterly, once a month.
You know the data, look at it from what can be handled, and, you go from there. Don't want to make it difficult. I think everybody would benefit from seeing the details. And, especially this council moved forward and said, we're going to double it up and put 2 people on. Just want to see more, how that plays out, electronically and professionally from a commercial level versus a residential level. Thank you.
Is quarterly too often for you?
You know what? Whatever the council wants is what's going to happen. So I will try and work on quarterly.
I don't want to add too much to you.
So that's okay. It's hard to get things done. And when we have good ideas like this, the tension is to, okay, how much can we do? And the good ideas that we have and trying to bring those together, right? So if quarterly is what the council is looking for, we can start working in that direction.
Does your software do have any?
Oh, sure.
So, I mean, there may be some things that you already have, and just as generating a report that might suffice, that would make it easier for you?
If there's not a report in the software, we have the ability to make our own reports in that software to tailor it to breaking things down, but still just breaking those things down and then taking the time to organize our thoughts, to present those thoughts, so they come across well. And, it just takes time each time you do it, but it's a great idea and we should do it periodically. And so if quarterly is
When you sit down and think about it, email us and tell us what you think it would be reasonable, and we can go from there. How
It
about
can
that?
always be modified.
Yeah, it can be modified. I don't wanna put too much on you, but we would like that information at some point so we could just see how we're doing as well, you know? My second question though was for you. By inspections, what were you talking about?
I was speaking about industrial, mechanical inspections, commercial inspections. And
We-
that's a different issue that we would need to discuss. So not just residential inspections when the thing's taking place, from real estate point of view. So let's say, for example, we had a mall here, or we had 5 different buildings, 5 different stores, and stop me if I'm talking off, right? So everybody's supposed to have a fire extinguisher in there, right?
Yeah.
So we would have someone go in there and make sure the thing was done every year, and there's a.
There are regular inspections for this.
Right.
There are fire inspections for commercial. There are commercial buildings have regular inspections that they have to go through.
Right. So then to review that process and to make sure that everything possible is being covered by that. And I
You want to know what their inspection process is? I'm just asking the question.
that might be interesting in the future to know what the inspection process is.
'Cause
but
they
just to
do,
draw that out. Right.
There is a regular inspection for those.
And it's not, okay, right. I guess we could talk about that further. The other item
Yeah,
I
let's
wanted
do
to.
that after.
I have another question.
Wait,
I want to stay on that topic, just to give you a very brief what
Before-
we do right now.
Okay,
Right.
that's great, but before we go on, I'm sorry to interrupt. I think it's important to note as the council manager form of government, right, that, when we're not actually asking Mr. Byton to do the work, this is all gonna be submitted to the city manager, who will determine what rate could these reports be produced at, what information is gonna be included in things, so that we don't start taking, Mr. Byton and his office off to perform this specific duty that's being stated to them, and then have other work that, of course, he's not gonna abandon any of that, but to have any of that other stuff suffered. So that's why we would decide, okay, we want this information, and then we would turn it over to the administrative staff to determine how it's gonna be returned back to us. That was just for the council, sorry, okay.
No problem at all.
Yeah, if you could
So-
tell me about the stuff,
Just
that'd be great.
quick overview, from there are 2 ways that those inspections are happening and that you're talking about, I think, and one of them is through for sale, inspections. Anytime a property, changes hands or an addition or an alteration is made, the building and engineering, does an inspection on those buildings, right? So that's one opportunity. I know the fire, has a process also for inspections of all buildings, not just the ones that are changing hands, for example. Fair enough.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor and Council. Just real briefly, so in addition to all your certificates of occupancies, your change of sales and stuff like that, our fire marshal division, well, our fire marshal goes out and regularly conducts inspections. Like, he usually does about 3 or 4 to 5 a day, depending on how his day goes. And we just rotate those businesses, and the goal for any community is to try to get through each business every 3 years. It doesn't always happen that way because things come up, but you certainly hit your high hazard businesses more often than you would your low hazard businesses. But there is a process where we just go through the city, randomly select businesses. We send them out a letter saying that we're coming. We give them a list of, I think it's 10 to 15 of most commonly missed items during a fire inspection, so they kind of know we're coming, they know what we're gonna look for when we get there to kind of make the process go easier. And then we have a billing, fee structure that was approved by council based on square footage of the building. Well, and really sometimes that's the problem, right, is because in BSA you have the property owner, right? Well, so sometimes that address is going to the property owner in addition to the property, and it may be the manager. And I'm not, you know, to every business is a little bit different. You don't know who at that business is gonna be there when you show up, and you don't know who at that business is going to receive the bill, because sometimes the bills don't get paid. Sometimes the people working at their facilities don't really care that you're there. So ultimately, it'll go to tax roll, and and that's when you really get the true business owner involved in it, but we are doing those inspections on a regular basis.
So, Mike, I guess, and we gotta be careful with, so we can, well, we can do what we gotta do. With the ordinance stuff, we're just basically reacting to ordinance still. We're not looking for, like, I mean, are we blatantly looking out for safety ordinances, or are we looking for things that would make the community better, like,
So
like
certainly,
buildings that have peeling paint and, you know, are falling, you know, different things like that? What are our primary ordinance things that we're focusing on, or is it just pretty much when we're reporting on stuff?
so certainly the complaint site is a primary driver of our tasks. But I can tell you that right now, we're spending this week and next week collecting addresses of all the dumpsters, for example, that are in the city without enclosures. And because that got away over time because of the staffing levels that we had, it's not our goal to be punitive and just to beat these people into compliance in a week or two. But we're gonna get a letter put out to them, and we're gonna talk to them about, hey, this is an ordinance that we need to bring back into conformance with these properties. Please start working toward, and then we'll be talking to you in another 2 or 3 months, because it takes a little time to get this going. We did this very successfully, and this is largely work that's being formed by the 2 ordinance officers that have a lot of skill, and they're out there seeing what's going on, right? And so they're working to come back to say, hey, this is what we see. This is what this looks like an area, just like when our Mr. Braun came to us a few years ago. There was a definite need to get the car lots under control on the east side of Michigan. Not that they were bad, they just swelled up during tax season and their cars were spilling into the right-of-ways. And so he was he took time, and he sent out letters and said, hey, we're coming your way. We need to kind of keep these, or bring these areas back into conformance. And that's kind of where we're headed with the dumpsters. So most of our work is complaint generated or driven, but we are seeing areas in the city where we can say, okay, this is where we could make a significant difference if we tried to work people back towards this ordinance that was put in there for a reason. We worked awful hard in 2001, I think it was, to bring all the businesses into conformance, and I think we had them all in conformance at that time. But again, with staffing levels and things, you know, people bring dumpsters in and they forget about that enclosure rule, and then that lends itself to debris being displaced in other areas, and so we want to try and get that back together.
So how do we make the impact to make the community better through ordinance? I kind of think we have ordinance and we're just focusing, I'm not blaming anybody, but I'm just talking, trying to understand. So we're just reactive, really more reactive, and you're trying to focus on the garbage cans thing, or the enclosures right now. But what, and how do we use ordinance to try to make the community better? I mean, I know that for myself, I was looking at it from an ordinance. There's things in the neighborhoods, there's things in the business community that could really make an impact that people would notice. How do we do that?
So we're hopeful that the enclosures
what else
on
do we
these
need?
dumpsters will make a big impact, so people will notice. If there are other ideas that we need to consider as we have time, right? So this is the one that, you know, we're gonna get that list together. We're gonna have that finished up by a week from Friday, and we're gonna go over that together and generate that letter, and it'll take, I don't know, let's say 2 months, 3 months to really start getting to the individuals and We have winter coming, so they're gonna have to build these in the spring maybe, but we're gonna get through that. Once we get through that, we move on to the next one. And if that order should change in what we're pursuing, we're very flexible to address the things that seem to be the highest priority of council or the city manager. So we're listening to that.
Yeah, so should we, to the city manager, should we be saying we see there's all these buildings that have lots of paint problems or whatever, and that's a focus, this is like how do we move ordinance to be not just reactive, but focusing on how to,
More people.
well, I figure that.
Give us 5.
So it's gonna take 5 to.
Yeah, so 5 is an exaggeration.
No,
it goes
but I'm
to-
just
it
asking
goes
questions
to
to
the
make
point.
this realistic.
It goes to the point. If you want to really be ahead of of a lot of this stuff, then it takes a lot more people. And so, but we still have that doesn't mean that we don't have ability to do things like this dumpster. It'll take a little bit of time. And it doesn't mean that one has to be first. The ordinance department can hit the brakes pretty hard on this if the city manager says, you know what? we don't wanna go that route first. We understand it's a priority. We'd rather go this route that the council decides is the more important route. We can adjust very quickly to that, right? So we're listening to what council says. We're watching what happens very closely in our community to try and find the best balance and be most efficient and effective with the time we have.
Yeah, I'm just trying how to manage that everybody's not getting frustrated with each other. That's realistic, that have realistic expectations of what can be accomplished. Maybe that's every year, coming up with, as we're talking goals, here's an item that's for 24, here's an item for 25, here's an item for 26. That is a focal point that as we're trying to build, and I don't know if that's the way the council wants to do it. I'm just trying to throw out, how do we realistically that we're able to accomplish something that we want to have happen and not just be reactive to, on top of, we need more staff, obviously.
Very respectfully, if the council determines what they want and tell the city manager, and the city manager is gonna tell me that's how it's gonna go.
No, I understand, but it's the realization of how much, I know the departments are overtaxed as it is, and so,
That makes it challenging, yes.
I mean, I'm trying to be realistic in how we're all looking at this, so that we're not blowing ourselves up to try to accomplish one thing, then not be able to do something else. I mean, it's very delicate what we're trying to, with the environment we're having.
So,
I'm sorry, Michael, what do you have the ideal if residents would just take care of their issue on the first run, instead of pulling these guys through court 15 times, week after week after week after week after week? And that's what wastes a lot of their time, is having to go back into the courtroom over and over and over, back to the property, over and over and over. I mean, it's just a constant vicious cycle, and we have several in the city that occupy a lot of your time, Mike, and your team's time, especially in the, going to court and having to go back out, and they make a little bit of a dent, and it goes back. It's just, that's not going to change, because you just have people that just are not going to just, okay, clean it up, get it done, move on. You just have some people that they have to go back every time. Sorry, Mike, I didn't mean to cut you off.
no,
Yeah.
it's fine.
Yes.
So is there a way to, if there's a second violation for the same thing, can we raise the violation on it? The third time, a fourth time, can we raise that violation so maybe they?
It doesn't seem like they care
We,
in a lot of ways.
yes, that, and we have changed the way that we're operating within the court now, so, it's important for us, because again, we're not trying to be punitive on anybody, right? The goal would be to have everybody to have compliance, so we have conversations with people first, right? We say, hey, this is what we see most of the time. Occasionally, if it's something pretty simple, we might just put a tag on the door that says, hey, we need you to get this done. Then if that doesn't happen, it might be a second notice, or we'll write a ticket. But usually, we've given people every opportunity to accomplish something before they get to where they're having to talk to our attorney and the judge. So what used to happen is then when it would get to the court, then the court would want to give them some time also to address it. And we'd say, respectfully, court, we've really given plenty of opportunity for these people, and this is the documentation that we have to show that we've done that. And so now what we're doing is we are shortening that process and saying, hey, if we've given you all the opportunity to address this, and after you receive the ticket, and it still takes about 2.5 weeks to get them into court after that ticket is written for scheduling purposes, and they haven't taken care of that in an additional 2.5 weeks after they receive the ticket, okay, pay the penalty now, we're gonna write a ticket tomorrow. And again, it's not to try and be punitive to the people, but it's trying to get them to pay attention a little bit, because some of the people, like Lisa has mentioned, just don't pay attention. And they know how it works, and they know how they can stretch these things out. And so we're trying to balance taking care of the residents well with not having to try and repeat as much.
No, I mean, I can see where that could be very frustrating and taking up extra time, and how we can, I mean, it's a fine balance to try to, we're here for the residents, but we're here for all the residents, and trying to, that we're, a small group that's behaving poorly are the ones we spend the most time with.
That's a really good point, and I would love to focus on that for just a half a second. Most of the people in the city of Wayne that we talk to take care of their stuff right away.
Right.
We have a wonderful community here of people that do a great job. So what we are talking about is a very small amount of the population, maybe 2% of what we have to deal with are these people that we're talking about. But these 2% do use up a lot of time, a lot of resources, and they drag things out. So it makes it look like the city's not responding really well. So we try and make a good effort to say, we are responding. We have to work within the guidelines that we're provided with, right, within our own department and within the court, and to move the, but if somebody is resistant to the point of trial, it could take a year and a half before, and in the meantime, these people have to live with that situation. So primarily, though, we have a lot of great residents in the city of Wayne that do a good job of keeping their properties up, and I'm happy for that.
So to the city manager to help with this. So if there's issues that council sees that they really see as an issue that needs to be addressed, should they send that issue to you to how to prioritize that? Or how do we try to figure out what are the issues to help Mike in the department?
A lot of the council uses the online method.
Why?
It's Mike.
But I'm saying from the standpoint of how do we, the bigger picture of what are, to have them focusing on when it's not just, we're just dealing with the reactive stuff. How do we?
Well, you have to remember, Mayor, you got to put it in perspective of the fact that something may be small to you, but it may be huge to a resident.
Right.
And I think you have to, remember that, where it may seem like a nuisance next door to somebody is small because there's a building that doesn't have paint and it's chipped. To that resident, that means a lot because they're taking care of their home. And so I think that, they know how to prioritize. They know how to look at things. They know when they have to go out there a lot quicker than just grass or something small. But I really don't know how you can, they know that. They know they're experts in that area on what is actually something they have to make more of an emergency than not.
And I guess I'm not saying emergency, I'm just.
Let's look at something specifically that I think we all witnessed. We all drove by it, we all drive by it, we come here twice a month and we look at what used to be Jake's Bar, and it finally got painted. And I'm going to make the large assumption that you get so many warnings and warnings and warnings, and how many years did that take to get to the point where they painted the building?
Right.
But we followed the process.
We did follow the process.
You put a stake in the ground, you said this is unacceptable, it needs to come to here, and it took 3 years, 4 years?
Changes property owners and all kinds, there are all kinds of things.
And they
that
play games
draw
too,
these
because they
out.
change owners and
Yeah,
start the clock over.
And then the
So
paint
2
job-
years is what you're saying it took to get it painted, once we,
Almost 3.
yeah, so,
And the
okay.
paint job is mediocre, but it got.
Yeah, but that's a perfect example, I mean, to what you're trying to say, what you are saying is that it's not an immediacy, this is a process, you get a warning, and it seems like, and I coach a lot of residents that you didn't get a ticket if you didn't get a warning. And they think the paper is a ticket, and it's not, it's a warning, and then you got so much time, So time goes by, and then they come back and they say, okay, you did a little bit, but you need to do this, and then it just stretches out. It's a whole year on one action.
To the mayor's point, if something is a particular issue that causes more disturbance than normal, we usually have a pretty good ear to that. What also helps is if there's more than one person that complains about that same issue, right? That kind of starts to elevate it. When we see that if we have 3 or 4 people making a comment about a particular issue, we're starting to see that it's affecting more. When it might look like it's a issue relative to all the other ones, I say, hey, this one is grabbing a lot of attention. We need to pay attention to this one a little bit more. So we always have opportunity to balance the schedule to meet the highest priorities of the city of Wayne as it relates to ordinance. So it's just, we have a certain order that we use for that. If council wants to have interject into that, we're very flexible to do what they want, I guess.
Any other? Yes.
You mentioned that with 2 people, you were basically doing 2x the effort, or 2x the bank. Previously it said that this is a largely self-funding position. Would it make sense to have a 3rd person for you?
As a department right now, we're pretty full. And so,
Space-wise.
space-wise, staff-wise, managerial-wise, just all of it, we're pretty full. And so we're very thankful for that. That's a big change from where we were 2 or 3 years ago. It would be good perhaps to see, after a year of this or so, how that funding that extra person works out the way we believe it's going to. And if it does, and we can, we're stabilized in the number of people we have and all the activity that's going on, that might be a good thought, yet to add another person.
All right, and second question. We have a number of places or houses that are being rented right now.
Yes, sir.
Is there any way we can make sure that we inspect those on a regular basis?
Every 3 years, we inspect those.
What if those aren't registered as renting houses though?
We work very aggressively to find all the homes that are out there for rent. Doesn't mean that we catch all of them, but we aggressively pursue those.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so, and it probably would fit under this, and I don't want to get too far sideways, but I know the city manager and I go back and forth on this issue and try to, how do we deal with this? Like, let's throw it out there, graffiti in the community, because there's no address on these things, and it's an ordinance issue. How do you even report that kind of stuff to you? I mean, and how do you deal?
2 points.
I mean, I know it's an issue to me. I see it. I don't know if it's issues to other council people, and maybe it's just I have a problem, and that's just my problem. But I'm just trying to understand how do we deal with the bigger issue in dealing with some of these types of things. So I just feel like you lose control of your community.
So a couple points about that. The first one is if the graffiti is on a utility or in the railroad, for example, those are very difficult to get a hold of those larger entities and get them to remediate that situation. That doesn't mean that we don't try, we do, and they do get done, but it takes a long time because those are bigger entities and they don't often respond very quickly to our concerns. For the ones that are in vacant lots, if you grab an address of an adjacent lot and just say, hey, to the left or right, and depending on how you're facing, I guess left or right could be different, but you get us close to that property, we'll find it, right? And so just grab an address, say close to this home right here, we'll go look in the area and see where that graffiti is. Or wherever.
I mean, you said that it's like utilities or street signs, and I mean, just on Second Street, it's on the bridge, it's on the street sign, it's on,
Bridges are difficult.
Yeah,
Street signs would likely be us, right? So,
I mean, Is
depending on
it
the
something
size.
that if, you know, we had a task force of people that were looking for that and they could pile that information and were able to give it to your department, would that be easier?
That's below if you wanna hold off on aesthetics.
Okay.
I mean, we're getting into.
Yeah, that's what I was, that's what I,
The two items were about speeding tickets and ordinance tickets. I think we're getting a little too far, maybe.
that's what I was not sure. I just wasn't sure if that's an ordinance ticket.
Talk about that.
Yeah, graffiti is a violation, and
that's why I
we'll
brought
take
it
them
up.
into court if we have an owner to associate with that. Yes.
It's only if you can associate it to a business or a home.
It's hard to, if you, it's hard to write a ticket to an entity, a company, a business, right? We can generally go on the state website and find a responsible party, and then we can start working with them. But if it's in front of, on a building of a local, shop, usually those guys are pretty quick to take care of it, because they want their place to look nice.
Yeah.
Those aren't the ones we have a harder time with, so it's,
It's
Or the
it's
ones
the
that-
vacant properties that they usually had. I mean, I know that Lori's had to deal with, there was a large property that somebody just graffitied all over it. And they were able to deal with it, quite rapidly and respond to it. So I just was wondering how, from an ordinance side of it, is there any ordinance aspect to it? So we can move on. That's fine.
I just want to chime in real quick on that. For this particular item and for the things that we were talking about, folks not keeping their property up and things, I think a large part, that this is something that the council could deal with, because we can't ordinance pride in the city. We need to encourage that somehow, and I think we need to talk about that separately as a team. So, thank you.
So is that a task force type of a thing that we would?
I'd have to think about that. What do you guys think? Some small team or committee to look at what could be done to talk to the citizens?
I think what we have to do is, after we go through this, we have to.
Yeah, we gotta go
give
through
our
all these things,
priorities
yeah.
and then go from there and,
Write things down and then
Go back.
submit it back to
just, I think we need to move along a little.
Faster.
If our plan is to go through all of these, we need to move along a lot quicker.
Yep. Focus on, continue to pay down pension obligations.
I think this one needs to be moved up to ongoing, because with what the state gave us, we're at 60% now.
Yeah.
So we've never been that way, right?
Well, we go back and forth between 59 and 60, so.
Right.
You're correct. You're staying in that area.
Right.
That's,
So with the gift of 1.1 and the fact that we got that should be accounted for as ongoing. It's not like we have a bigger issue, which is that $8 million hill that we're not gonna be able to get to in the near future based on the plan. I don't know if MERS is gonna let us recalculate for another 20 years
Yeah,
and
Katie, find us some more
spread it out
savings.
a little more, but that's about the only way they're gonna, when you got a budget that's between 18 and 20 million and your MERS payment is going to be 8 million, and not to mention 6 is a hardship and 5 is a hardship, it's getting to the point of half our budget. It's not, that, we can't come up with that. So,
It's a major problem.
Just to talk about for that a moment, I don't know who to approach with this, but is there any other creative way that could be dealt with these things? Like, could they be sold off in a block perhaps, or some group of them? So that there might be an upfront cost, but what cost would that be? And then someone else would take care of it. They wouldn't lose their, benefits, but we wouldn't be engaged in it anymore. I'd have to look into that. I don't have anything for you right now. But I agree, it's a big problem.
Yeah. What about, and I don't know that we can even get a bond, but other communities have bonded for this. Is that something that's smart? It seemed like it's worked out because of what happened, but at the time it didn't. I thought it was a really bad idea, but didn't other communities, because they bonded, were able to get to the 60%
they
even though.
just kicked the can down the road.
yeah, and you're paying interest on top of that.
Yeah.
So you're adding money to the money, and you're just deferring. Well, all we can do is we've been honest with them. They already moved us spread it out. They're going to have to do that. I don't see how they can't, look at it and say, yeah, I know you only have an $19 million budget, but we still, 8 million is still your number. I think that they want us in there, and they don't want us to default, and we don't want to default, but that number needs to be spread out. It's real. It's what they provided for us. It's not going away.
Actually, this is a really big issue. Could we cut this out and have this for the team to look into this?
Was that?
To look into the entire retirement issue and include MERS in there? I don't think that's in our list, but I was.
Yeah, go ahead.
I agree with you. This is not, I mean, we could talk about this all night. Maybe we could have like a little smaller committee, start looking into options, whether or not MERS is willing to spread that out more, renegotiate the, because
I mean, mayor has the ability to make ad hoc committees. That's part of our charter. Where are we at?
Everybody fine to move to the next one?
I just like to see it moved up to the ongoing because we have made progress on this.
I could agree with that.
Take all the successes we can get.
Base stormwater fees on square footage of impervious areas.
It sounds very technical.
This was something that our former Mayor Pro Tem had brought up as a goal, so it's a good thing you're here in case you
Thanks,
want
Tom.
to have questions.
You have a perspective that you want to add to this before I speak on it?
MPT ex officio.
So, we have water sewer funds that address water pipe, water main, and their valves, everything that goes with water main. We have a sewer fund that addresses the, sewer, only the part that takes the sanitary from the homes and businesses to a place to be cleaned. And then we have a roads fund as far as infrastructure goes. But the state has never provided funds for stormwater. So we have all these pipes that were put in to take care of the water that's coming from the roads and the parking lots, but we have no funding mechanism to now maintain those pipes. So we have pipes that are separated that need to be put back together. We have pipes that are crushed that need to be replaced. And so I've been focusing more on the water rates with Great Lakes Water Authority, and I haven't been paying so much attention to the stormwater legislation, where that's at, with being able to charge the community with rates as it relates to stormwater, so that we can fund the work that needs to be done with our stormwater pipes. There's a heavy burden placed on the residents and the business owners in our community already. So trying to balance what you can do with what makes sense for your community is also a challenge. So I know that we're communities are looking at this stormwater fee, and the state's been talking about it, and we, as it comes up, may have to deal with that as how it would relate to our community, if it would be in the best interest for us to do that. I'm not as up to speed on that as I should be right now, but I could look into that more.
Yes.
Through the chair, Mike, when we have to go in and we have to suck out the drains, stormwater drains for the dirt that is collected in the water, in the sewers, where's that money coming from? Because I know there's a cost to that.
So I believe that's maintaining the roads by keeping that debris clean out of the catch basin, so that would come out of the road fund, the local major road fund.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yes.
With square footage of impervious areas, would that be for businesses, homes, both?
I think that's open. I think there's more to, I think we have to watch more what's going on in the state and other municipalities, and again, balance that with where we are as a community, and what might be best as that starts to move along.
Great.
Is there somebody in the state that's leading the way on this at this point?
Tom, do you have anybody offhand? Okay. I've sat in meetings related to this a while ago. Stormwater. There was a push about 3 years ago to try and get some of this implemented. one community did try this, and the state came down on them, and they had to reimburse the community, the people that they implemented these rates against. So then, my understanding was they were coming back around the state with the communities to work on, how to do this successfully together. I know that this is popular in places in Europe, not in our country necessarily. But we do have to find a way to take care of our storm sewer pipes as well. And so it makes some sense what's being talked about, but I haven't heard anything most recently. So I can research that a little bit, and get back to you guys on that, but I don't have a whole lot on that right now.
Sounds to me like Mr. Porter's an expert in this across the state. And in the meantime, the things that you were mentioning to me, what jumped out to me was taking care of this. I'm not sure about it. It does sound technical. I'd like to learn more about it. But that this would directly affect our parks and recreation, our quality of life, and even provide an improved economic phase perhaps, because this is so important to the surrounding environment we have and also the built environment internally, because you were talking about crushed pipes and things like that, so I'm thinking that's not very good. So I think this is pretty important, but I don't know how to approach it.
Let me make sure I keep that in perspective. Those are very, very minimal, but they're there, and so they do need to be addressed. But our system as a whole is very good for storm sewer, and we do make minor storm sewer repairs when we're doing road projects. If there's a catch basin that's crushed or something like that.
So you're, and just to clarify, you're looking at this, that we have the stormwater sewer system, that it costs money to maintain it. We have no funding mechanism to do that, so that's what we're trying to.
None of the communities have
Have
a
that
funding
fund.
mechanism, and so
Just to
that's
make sure
what's
everybody's
being
on the-
studied right now a little
Yeah.
bit. I just don't know where we're at the moment on that.
Okay.
I just Googled it, so there's Ann Arbor. And they have, now I don't know if it's in effect now or not,
Yeah, I'd have to look.
just saying that how much is stormwater rate in Ann Arbor? And they have a tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 different square footage. Just thought I'd throw that out.
So there's a part of learning more about this, and then even if we know about it, is this something that we want to project onto our community? So that has a little ways to go yet, I think.
Okay. Any other, yes?
Well, not just our community, but what about county roads through our community? That's a whole lot of impervious, what is it? Yeah, impervious area.
What about county roads, you're saying?
Yeah, the county roads are all cement or blacktop, so they're impervious.
Mm-hmm.
So.
We wouldn't be charging ourselves though.
No, the county?
Well, the county is us. So if we're charging the county, we're charging ourselves kind of, right? Because we pay those fees.
Gotcha.
Anything else?
Could I just pop in for a minute? Are we gonna be able to hit the city manager, job description? Because I was under the impression we were gonna have these meetings perhaps every month so that we could go over these goals and start to develop the policy. But that seemed to be, that was sticking out. I just thought I'd bring it up.
Next Tuesday?
What are we talking about now?
I was wondering if we could skip ahead to the city manager thing and come back to the rest of these, because a lot of these are gonna take us years to work through.
I agree. I think that we're looking at this at a very immediate level, not a high level. Gonna take some time on this. I don't know, Mayor, this is your agenda.
This is,
I'm fine with anything, it doesn't matter.
what, I mean, it's a wish of council, what you guys want. Do we want to continue to get through this financial section, or what?
Why don't we finish the financial section tonight, come back to aesthetics in a future meeting and so on? One section per meeting.
We could provide more dates on the next agenda too,
Okay.
if that's, your wish if the 29th doesn't work.
Okay.
I think we already talked about this one.
They explore the selling
Yeah,
of,
Councilman Clairman had asked if there was gonna be Harry Branch and J.C. were gonna be discussed.
Yep.
already answered that question already.
Well, one quick question on that. What does it say except for J.C.?
The next line said has to be convinced, but I left it off of there. I don't know if that person wants to raise their hand, but that's what that was what was on there.
And I'll admit it, that was my goal. I threw that in there, but that was because of issues, you know, dealing with residents in that area. Go ahead.
Mayor? So, I know that is a pet park of yours, but, and I'm not trying to speak out against you or any disrespect whatsoever, but if you look at the success of what has happened in Kiwanis Park, J.C. Park would be the, besides Sewin, Angelo DeMario, and Vandenberg, which we already have a purchase agreement we're working with Infinity Homes on, that would be the next natural park for housing development. And I understand the sensitivity because it is a park, and I will tell you, and I hate to use this, but where I live in Westland, we don't have a park in every single neighborhood. I grew up in Wayne, we were spoiled. We had walking parks within walking distance of every single subdivision in this city. And I will tell you, a few nights ago, I was over at a friend's house, and because of the houses in Kiwanis Park, their home value 1 block over from Kiwanis has increased significantly, that they could sell their home if they choose to. And I really think that, you know, I mean, we've got people in this room that were, their family members may have been against selling the parks, but we have beautiful homes at Kiwanis Park. All 22 homes have sold. They've sold at higher rates than any home in the city of Wayne has sold for in years. And it's a no-brainer. I'm sorry, walk to Atwood Park. We just put a $70,000 playscape at Atwood Park. It's a little bit further than J.C. I really wonder if those residents in that area would be grateful that we increase the value of their homes by putting no homes across the street from them, by taking away a park that does not get used. Just my 2 cents.
How many parks do we have now?
Roughly around 17, maybe 16, right?
We have 15 parks and 2
2
trails.
trails.
We had 16 parks and 2 trails at one time.
There we go.
Bang,
It's my
right
job to
there.
know that.
So, not trying to convince the person that said you have to convince me, but you're a body of 7 people, and I truly feel that based on the success of the sales and the homes in Kiwanis Park, we could probably put another 20-some-odd homes. And if you remember, when we talked about selling J.C. Park, I did ask if there was an opportunity, when we had a previous buyer, to put a small pocket park in that area. So that is something we could negotiate. Is there an opportunity to maybe do 20 homes in a small pocket park for that neighborhood? So I'm up for the challenge. If that's a directive the council was to give me, I would take care of it tomorrow.
May I ask a question? So was it, I thought it was, it was neighbors around J.C. that didn't want it to go.
There were some, same thing at Kiwanis Park.
Would we, could we do a poll again to see if they might have
so-
changed their mind? Because, I mean, that
Well-
does seem like a perfect area. It's just like Kiwanis. That's one stretch there, and you could fit all those houses in there. And I know I had several clients interested in those homes.
So what would happen is we would have to they have to go through site plan approval. So there would be open public meetings for those people to come in and voice their opinions. If you remember, we did do some public meetings at the library. You know, that's an opportunity because we always want to give residents the opportunity to provide feedback. A good developer is going to want to get the sentiment of the surrounding neighbors. What are the issues? And that was the biggest thing that did come up during our public meetings with the former developer, is they would like to see some type of small pocket park at J.C. So certainly we could entertain any of those type of opportunities, but it would have to go through site plan approval, which would give the public the opportunity to comment.
So recap, for a park, this would have to be, we work through 2 things, through motions and through resolutions. This would be something that we would recommend to put on the agenda. If 2 council people approve it on the agenda, we can have discussion and it will be an open item, correct?
So how this would work and how I am proposing moving forward with 3 other parcels I'm looking at selling currently is that we would take it through the Property Disposition Committee, which is made up of the mayor pro tem, myself, and the city manager. We would bring the parcels forward, make recommendation to the city council, and the city council would either vote yes or no to sell those parcels.
Okay. I think that, I think JC needs to be on the table and looked at seriously for really helping the bottom line. It doesn't help the bottom line right now. It's an expense, and with 15 parks, and Rotary 2, less than a mile, walking distance, I can walk to either, from my home, I can walk to either Rotary or to JC, relatively same distance. So, it's not like there's a park across the park, but there is a park adjacent to the current park.
So, Mayor, as you know, today I called for a property disposition committee meeting. I have 3 parcels. I'm going to presenting 3 city-owned parcels that I will be presenting to this committee for potential sale. I can certainly put the JC parcel on there. As we know, it is not deed restricted, so it can be sold. And then it would be up to the committee to make recommendation to this body for a vote if that's your wish.
One of the things I also want to make sure that we look at our plan for our parks, that we know that what the amenities are, that we have the right things for the future before we just totally sell off everything. That was my concern from listening to people in the community. I mean, we had the 2 parks, and then we had the people that were looking. There was originally a person that was going to do both of them, and then that fell apart, and we pushed it to Kiwanis because it made sense, because there was a park across the street from a park. Out of the 2 parks, that made the most sense.
Right.
For me, I'm open to it. I just want to once you develop it, you lose it. And I just want to make sure that we just don't fire sale everything and not look at the long-term ramifications for the community if there's a need for it. If we feel like that it's the right thing to do, then that's the right thing to do.
I agree with you 100%.
That's all, just to make sure that we just don't look at it.
We don't have as many schools as Westland has in Wayne Westland schools, but schools are also going through an evolution of, there's a whole program of, you don't even have to go to school. And kids are taking part of that, and the charter schools are continuing to grow, and the old fundamental way of district school is their attendance is down. And you never know. I mean, those properties are in our backyard, and it could eventually turn into something that would be the best thing for us long-term, being a park or a combination of a park and a community, that I would hope we have a chance to be in on that when it happens.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's not as easy to say, the decision with Atwood and the other park across the street, because I always get that one wrong. That was easy. And it is tough to say, I'm taking the park that you all bought a house at and are looking into. I tried to get a house on facing JC. I couldn't get a house. That was one of my first places I wanted to. So I went 2 streets over. And to me, that makes sense.
Well, yeah, and back in the day, JC Park used to have a pavilion.
Well, we had a rec center.
Yeah.
We had a rec department. You
Yeah,
could
I
play
mean,
basketball.
that was like a main hub for, but you're talking the 50s, probably 60s. I remember
In the
in
70s,
the 70s,
we
they
had
tore
the
it
Jerry
down, or
Poplin
80s, they tore it
building.
down. Was it the 80s or 90s, they finally tore it down?
Yes.
Because it just deteriorated and stuff. And then, I know when I was on council, at the beginning, there was some people complained about basketball, and they cut the basketball hoops down, and that was really, tragic. That was not the expectation. I know as a council
So
person,
essentially, it's not a park anymore.
not the way that it
Used
was, it's not the same thing. But I know that it's an open space, and we don't have a lot of open spaces like that.
Well, again,
So,
Mayor, if I
yeah.
could, we can talk to the developer and see financially if it's worth it for a small pocket park.
Yeah, no, I'm open to listening. It just, all I was saying when I put myself out there that I was the one that said something that was my concern.
Respect.
Who maintains the pocket parks in those little developments? Because
So if
because the neighborhoods that have associations, they have it maintained, right?
Great question.
So who takes care of that?
So if there was a situation like that, there would have to be an association. Mike, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, well, I'm just thinking of Monroe Commons that was put up
Exactly what I was thinking.
It's good to know because of the fact that you don't want it to be left untouched.
It always could be turned into like a condominium that type of development where the park was a common element, but often it happens more like Monroe Commons. There was an old elementary school right at the dead end of John, just east of Wayne Road. That elementary school was torn down and there was a set of new homes built in there. I believe that's Rotary Park number 2. And then the city is responsible for that. So largely those parks fall to us unless there's an association, like Lori was saying, that's specifically created in the development of that. So the more I think about it, the more I think this would go to the city because there's already a subdivision there. And what this would look like is it would look like a redivision of the lots that are not sized for today. They were sized for a long time ago. So like Kiwanis Park, these existing lots would be reconfigured. They'd be split and combined to form lots that would be in conformance with today's criteria. So by doing it that way, there wouldn't be much of a mechanism. Perhaps we could creatively come up with one that those people would be responsible for that part, but most likely it would go to the city.
Yes.
We're responsible for J.C. Park now, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So if we had a pocket park, it would just be a much smaller park that we would be responsible for. I mean, a lot less land to take care of.
I mean,
Yeah,
that's
for,
what I'm saying. It's still maintenance though, and I mean, this
Yeah.
city, we're 6 square miles, 2 square miles is sport, how many square miles is parks?
well,
You know, and I think the whole point was that, you know, and that's a great, you know, what you're saying is great, I just adding into this, is that, we're trying to encourage people to use the other parks. Right, we're trying to get them to utilize everything, so pocket parks are nice, but we also want people to use the parks, because when they use the parks, then sometimes it helps to keep them cleaner and better and better use and things like that. So, and I think right now, the whole point would be, I think somebody had said it previous that ran for council years ago, they said, I'd rather have 5 awesome parks that we can maintain, take care of, and look great than have 15 that we cannot maintain at all. And I think that it's not, I don't think it's the city trying to bash parks, we love parks, but I think we just have to kind of right size to what we have and what we have available. Because right now, we're just doing the bare minimum, but I mean, Ned's been able to do a lot more with, you know, certain fencing and things like that, but it's still constant upkeep. Constant upkeep, and some of our parks are in such bad shape. Such bad shape. So, thank you.
Yep. Any other questions or thoughts on this
Thank you,
before?
Thanks, Mike.
Okay. Development of a short-term, long-term strategy to address the structural deficit. Well, we're stuck here the rest of the night just on that issue.
I'd love to hear from another committee created if the council would like to do that and work with the finance department.
Yeah, I mean, because that's a huge,
That'll take time.
yeah, it's important. It's just, how do you even get your arms wrapped around that?
Again, I think, Mayor, you have the discretion to make ad hoc committees.
So when we're saying these committees, I mean, do we put council, residents, everybody, you know, what's the makeup of a committee for these? Any thoughts?
I mean, the more diverse the group, I think the better it is. The points are shared with the community, so I think that sometimes we do things for speed and efficiency, and this one, I think that the whole community would benefit from a panel that is made up of both, that work together to understand why we got to this point and how can we climb out of it, you know? And many of these things that are on here are contributing to that by, you know, if we can get to the point where we had 20,000 residents, 20,000 belly buttons, you know, what impact does that make on the city financially? When I look at it, I look at the surrounding cities, I mean, people make assumptions, but when you start to look at the numbers, Garden City's bigger than us, you know, Inkster's bigger than us in size. So,
So, Mayor, Mayor, if I could, I understand what you're saying. So through all the RRC requirements we were trying to do, one part of that was public engagement. And if you would like, I'd be willing to look at their guidelines to see what their recommendations are for public engagements. So we're not just willy-nilly, so we actually look to see where the state of Michigan recognizes that we need public engagement in what areas of the city. I'd be happy to research that.
It's a great idea. That's a good, great jumping off point.
Okay, thank you.
No, I agree with that. I think that'd be wonderful.
I don't know, the RRC, I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with that. Apologize.
The Redevelopment Ready Communities Initiative. I know you are. You just forgot. It's okay. It's just, they have some great resources for guidelines and templates for cities to follow.
Any other things on this point? Explore PA 228.
What is PA 228?
Golden question. Glad you asked, Councilman. So the state passed legislation. This used to be an ability for, communities under 15,000 to levy an assessment for police and fire services specifically. What they changed the legislation to allow 15,500 or more to do that. Under 15,500, you do not have to go to a vote of the people, but over 15,500, you do. So this would just be an assessment that the council could consider putting on the ballot for police and fire service to levy more mills. Those have worked out really well in this city, so. But, you know, it is a way to, but it doesn't really help us with our pension. I mean, you can shift costs around because you can, you know, use for equipment, services, things like that, whereas 345 is specifically for pension. Police and fire pension. Does that help?
It does.
Okay.
Anything else from council on this subject, or?
We'd have to do it in, obviously, and even your election next year, or any moving forward.
Yeah, if that's something that would, yeah. Okay. Cap the unused water lines in the DDA, DDA financial impact is what that would be. You can.
Give Lori's voice a rest for a minute.
No, I'll stand with you. As a representative of the DDA, I'm gonna tee it up a little bit. So this is something that did come before the DDA board. The DDA currently pays a fixed fee, for the water lines in certain areas of the city that used to have sprinklers. So this is something that was brought forward by the DDA, is that the DDA is paying roughly $928, I believe it is, every
2 months.
every 2 months for fixed fees. So we did commission a study, and I'm going to have Ed provide you with those numbers of what that would cost the DDA. So really, in my opinion, this is not a conversation we should be having at a city council level, but I'm happy to have it.
So, the short end of it, I don't have the numbers in front of me because I didn't realize that was on here tonight. But I think we just went over it. What it boils down to, we have ordinances that state for anybody, commercial businesses, anyone, a resident, a home that wants to be demolished. It involves a retirement of a water line is what it involves. It's not just an easy, hey, we took the meter out of your home or your business and we go ahead and just, get rid of the flat rate fees. You're still responsible no matter what, as long as that water line is still connected to that, water main, and if there's a sewer as well, if that's connected, that's involved as well. So it's a $700 fee for every water line that needs to be retired, and that comes with the cost of also any restoration, depending on where it's at, where we have to dig it up at. Some of them locations, like Lori had said, are in the DDA area by, let's say, for instance, Henry's right there. Water main is in the sidewalk there, so we'd end up having to dig down into take the sidewalk out, do all that, so all the restoration work to put the sidewalk back, as well as the $700 cost to remove that water line from the main. I believe there's maybe five or six of those maybe that we looked at, just 9, okay. So there's 9 of them, so you're talking right, $32,000 just to retire all of those water lines. And that's not including the restoration costs, depending on where it's at. Sometimes if it's in the green belt, then it's just topsoil and grass seed. But if it's concrete or it's in another area where we have to dig down on a water main in a roadway or anything, then you're talking about removing that as well. Some of those, I think there's one that's right there in the Metro Mall parking lot in the corner there, it's just south of the State Wayne, so on the southbound side of Michigan Avenue West in the corner where the walls are right there. There was a water backflow prevention system. I think there's another one up there by Tycook Village there on the corner of Pershing and Michigan Avenue eastbound. So they're spread out through it where the sprinkling system was vast. It's huge. The one that it covered everything on Wayne Road from Glenwood all the way to Michigan Avenue eastbound. It runs through the library. It runs all the way down to in front of Harry J. Will. So there's sprinklers all over, but there were just these 9 metering systems that controlled a lot of that, that provided the water to the irrigation. So there's a cost involved, and yes, we do charge everybody from our department. And the only reason we do that is because we've had commercial businesses come forward, for instance, like, I think it's next to O'Reilly's, is it the pet store still there?
Yeah, Goodies.
Okay, Goodies. So they own there's 2 storefronts, there's properties, and the Goodies has asked us, because there's 2 bathrooms in the one, because there's 2 separate storefronts. And they said, well, can we not pay that flat fee for the other one? And the answer was no. So we cannot do it for, the DDA if when we're telling the commercial businesses by following the ordinances, we follow those for everyone. So, and that would be up to the property owner anyways, that would say, oh yeah, you know what, I plan on, because there's an individual water line for every one of those storefronts. So in order for Goodies to remove or have that flat fee, which we told them that's up to the property owner, not you, we would have to remove a water line. Well, that wouldn't make much sense to the property owner, because if they at some point decide to split the storefronts back up, then they have to reinstall a new water line, which is even more expensive than the retirement. So there's cost involved with anything that you do. And so if the DDA was willing to foot that bill, and we would gladly go and retire all of those water services for them, and then they would no longer have those flat rate fee costs. Yes,
So we're looking at 32,000 retire them all?
that's not including restoration, so it depends where it's at. If there's concrete work involved, then they're talking more dollars.
How much are we saving per year once we retire them?
I'm sorry?
Right now, we'd be paying 4,500 a year if I'm doing the math right.
Mm-hmm.
How much would we save if we retired all those?
I'm not sure what the
$928.
cost is for the
times 6.
flat rate fees.
928. Can I add to that, please? Again, this is truly a DDA issue.
Right.
This is an issue that should not even be before this body, in my opinion, and I'm sorry for that. I will tell you, this has been brought before the DDA board. It is not their desire at this time to retire those lines. You may have noticed recently we planted all new daylilies in all the beds. So in the future, if our financial situation continues to improve, as Ed said, and we did listen to Ed because we consulted with him, is there an opportunity to reactivate those lines someday? Right now, we're paying Monday, Wednesday, Friday as part of our overall bid to have our flowers watered. So the DDA board determined a while ago that it was not what they wanted to do was to retire the lines. So I don't know if the reason why it was put on your agenda is because you thought maybe the general fund would cover that. I'm not sure. But if the general fund wanted to cover retiring those lines, then someday, I guess, if the DDA decided to reactivate those lines, we would have to foot that exhaustive bill. So I'm happy to take any direction.
Sounds like we might want to pull this one out.
Yeah,
Not the pipes.
Yeah, I'm gonna put a line through mine too.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you.
I want to just talk about this briefly. This is an issue that I felt that the council needed to be aware of, because we're spending money over and over and over and over again. DDA is going to continue. This was something that the past did, just like we've done with a lot of things that, in this community, there was no plan. These lines will never, the sprinkler system's never gonna work again. We're just paying this fee over and over and over again. And council, because you're not on the DDA, not aware. And I understand it's DDA, but at the same time, DDA is us. We're the city, in my opinion. It's still taxpayer money, you know, that we're all responsible for. So that's something that the council needs to be aware of, you know, that we're spending money over and over and over again. And it just it won't stop until we retire them. And you've got business owners that are on DDA that I don't know that they're gonna change. It's not important to them to fix that problem that way. So it's gonna continue to happen.
So Mayor, did you bring this because you're asking, since the DDA won't do it, you're asking the council to consider paying that money to do it?
Well, I think I would,
For the city right now.
it's a water and sewer issue to me, but that's how I look at it, you know, of how do you get it fixed? Because it's just gonna continue to happen. And when we're trying to save money, I just don't know how to stop the bleeding in that, because
If I can respectfully, again, through the chair, as I mentioned, the DDA has a new plan. We recently planted $30-some-odd thousand worth of daylilies. There is an opportunity in the future to reactivate the sprinklers. We've had outcry from residents that would like to see us continue with the daylilies from Michigan Avenue East to Van Born. If we're going to do that, we need to look at the costs, what we're spending now for those capped lines versus if we fix the lines to water versus what we're spending to water. So I think that's gonna be an ongoing conversation. I don't think it is a debt issue with the DDA, respectfully.
Okay. Okay. Yes.
At, the 928, we're gonna save per year for 32,000 to pay for capping them all right now, assuming it's just that. It's gonna take us 41 years for that to balance out.
No, that's $928 per every 2 months.
It's 2 months or a year?
2 months.
Oh,
So you
gotcha.
gotta multiply that, it's almost 6,000, so it's almost 60,000 over 10 years, just
Thanks.
under 60,000. So that's why I was concerned about it. Every penny matters to me. Anything else that we wanna talk on this stuff before we go into we'll go into the next section? Okay. I'm not exactly sure how we want to proceed with this. Lots changed since the last council meeting on what's going on with this, and so I think we need to be looking at, we know we've got to be looking at this as a whole of what the city manager's position is going to be for the future.
I'd just like to make a couple of remarks before we begin. I like the way this looks, but I would include some other items in this. This has to do with starting to begin with the communications between the city council and the city manager's office. I believe that the contacts with the city manager, the person who's the city manager is on call 24 hours a day. But that doesn't mean that they're on beck and call. So we can't just, say, okay, well, you're gonna do your thing at 2 o'clock on Saturday also. I don't think that's correct. I don't think it's good for morale, and I don't think it's good for us either. And so I think the first thing I want to say is that contacts with city manager, I believe, should be restricted to normal working hours only. So we'd be talking to them during normal working hours, and 5:01, we're like, okay, maybe that's going to wait for tomorrow. Maybe that's going to get an email. Maybe that's going to get something else. And we don't need to hear back because it's not an emergency. And now, if it's an after-hours incident and it's an emergency, then we would reach out, whether it's individual or anybody, however we needed to handle that. Only for emergencies, after-hour contacts. And I think that's pretty general. I work in IT, I've worked in other industries, and it's fairly common for that, you know. We're only going to contact you for emergencies. Sometimes the emergencies happen a little too often, you know. They're always calling me at 3 o'clock in the morning. Well, we don't want that to happen. If that were occurring, then we would need to step in with something else. But I think as a general rule, it's very important that after-hours contacts need to be only for emergencies with our city manager. And another reason for that I bolster this is our current city manager and any city manager that we have, we should expect to set up a system, to set up a structure that would support that, so that we wouldn't need to do something like that. And that's the way it's set up right now, and I want to see that continue to the future. That's why I think this should be added, that first of all, contacts with the city manager only happen during normal working hours unless it's an emergency. And then, so to reiterate, the city manager is available and on call 24 hours a day. That's already set up. It's set aside. We know that. But only contact after normal business hours for emergencies. And then also, we want to do something else. And this harkens back, if I could just finish. This harkens back to something that was close to my heart when I was running for council, right? And I'm not seeing any of this happen, right? But it's important for our relationships with the county and the state and the federal government and all our businesses that we start, our local businesses, that we start working with them, and also for the recognition we're starting to demand from the larger international corporations that work here, like the train companies. We don't want to even look like there's a problem. We don't even want to look like that. We want to look good all the time. And for that reason, I included the next thing. I think if a meeting's going to occur, that whoever works with the city manager, that they should provide a report about that meeting to all the other members of the city council, so we know what's going on. So you know, have a meeting with the city council, and you got something cooking, it's a good thing, but the rest of us don't know about it. First of all, the person that did that doesn't get the advantage of working with the others on the team, and then second of all, well, maybe you shouldn't be doing that, you know? But you think it's okay. We want to avoid that. Personally, I don't think regularly scheduled meetings are required either. I don't think we should put that in here. I don't think we should imply it. I think if one needs to be made, we'll have a meeting and do whatever needs to be done. I feel one weekly report right now that's being provided by the city manager to all members of the city council is just a great way to go to find out what's going on, to have that meeting. And the other things, if they come up specifically, then we can arrange that. But I don't think a regularly scheduled one offers us any benefits, because we're already getting that update. And if something else is going on, that's getting a little weird, because then they got to report back to everybody else. Now I'm getting 2 reports about one thing. So that's what I wanted to go over. It was a big lump of stuff, but I wanted to clear that up.
With that contacts with city manager, I just wanted to define that as a call to the city manager, not an email.
Well, let's say it's 9 o'clock at night and something comes up, or, you know, oh, I forgot, I got to do this. And for example, sometimes I may write something to Ed. I don't expect Ed to write me back at 9:05.
Right.
Not even 9:08, because I'm flexible like that, right? So the next day I might hear back from him, but I also see city managers. So if I see something going on and I remember, I don't expect to hear back from them. In fact, in that case, I don't expect to they may not contact me back, especially if it's something that I should have put in through the online portal, but I've had that communication. So no, we wouldn't stop emailing at that time, but I wouldn't expect them to, pardon me by them, I would not expect the city manager nor any department head or employee at all to respond outside of normal business hours.
All right, we're 100%
Did that-
clear on that.
Okay.
Thanks.
Can I, Mayor, if I may?
Yeah.
I think, and as you know now, because you get, when I send an email out, you get every copy, as I've always done, that if I send an email to city manager, I copy in the MPT and the mayor, and you've got my emails at 2 o'clock in the morning or 1 o'clock in the morning. Communication is an email, communication is a text, communication is a conversation, communication is a meeting. That's the number one thing that needs to be acknowledged. The other thing is I'd like to think I'm pretty good at this. I've adopted the rule that I was told, which is send it to the city manager and let the city manager send it to the department head. I do not direct deal with any department head. We all got to be on the same page on that capacity. So I think I think communication is an important thing to document. I think communication and methods needs to be identified in a way that is manageable and everybody agrees to. It helps the parties sitting on council. It helps the departments to know that, the confusion is like, if you send an email to one department head and you don't hear anything back, you may not be hearing anything back because he or she has not gotten the direction from the mayor or the city manager. My training I got was everything goes through the city manager then sends it on to the department head. That's the current method. I don't know if you guys all agree with that, but that's how I work.
Just so we.
So we're all not probably on the same page.
Yeah, just so we are, I mean, I would like clarification on this, because if I'm, there's a light out at whatever, I usually send it to, I CC Lisa and Ed, so that they both know. So Lisa knows, but I send it to Ed, because he's gonna deal with DTE, so that's what I was.
Yeah.
So honestly, if I'm doing Lisa and Ed for something like that, I don't even put the mayor and the MPT on there. I just send it to those two. So if there's some way I think that's policies and procedures that we need for ourselves, but input from the city manager would be great on how would you have wanted that to go? Should we have been CCing the mayor and the mayor pro temp and you, and that's how it went? Or should it have gone to you and the department head?
So the department heads, and they can certainly, vouch for this, this is something that they like to have in place, which is if you send something to them, just make sure I'm copied. And the reason we do that is because, say Mike's out of town, I can respond for Mike and say Mike's out of town, maybe I know another department head that has that knowledge about that issue, or we're gonna have to get back to you. So it's my job to know if Mike's not there or Ed's not there, who their backup is, and I know who to do that with, because when they leave, they give me a name of a backup, whether it's Kevin or whether it's Dave, so I know who can get that answer, if that makes sense.
So it was still okay to send it to Ed or to Mike or to whatever, as long as you are CC'd?
Yes, and I can make sure it's followed up on, and this is not a micromanagement tool by any means, it's just respect for each other's positions.
Well, and having that, like you said, if I wouldn't know if he's out of town, maybe,
That's
so.
That's correct. Thank you, Councilman.
And usually too, Councilwoman Was, when you do that, that's perfect, Mayor Pro Tem Brock has done the same. When it's just that person and the city manager, it's perfect because you're making us aware of what that issue is, and we already know, she knows that it's not something that's really that she's gonna take care of. But if there is something that's all of a sudden, something that I'm not aware of, like, oh, what is this? We'll have that discussion, and then she'll give us that direction that just says, oh, hey, they're talking about this, oh, okay. Maybe it's something I wasn't aware of, but usually what you guys have been doing and CCing her on there, she's aware of what's going on, and then we handle the, issue through our own departments. So thank you for that.
Can I ask a question to the human resources personnel? How would we, if these were okay, these ideas were okay about the contact points and the communication specifications, how would that get placed into the job description?
Thank you so much. Okay, I guess that goes more into a policy and guideline, and based on there's been two separate situations played out here. And looking at guidelines online and from other communities and so forth, I mean, it's been very clear that the contact from council goes directly to the city manager, and the city manager then distributes the directive. But again, if it's something like you just said, Councilwoman Was, and the city manager is okay with that type of communication, then the city manager's been made aware. So we've got two things. I mean, so it's kind of and communication, you can't do enough if you do it properly.
Right. Yep.
So I would just put that into more the policies and the guidelines, of how the communication goes through. And again, there's all kinds of examples from other communities of, It is, you don't direct the city manager. You communicate with the city manager for them to direct the staff.
Yeah, that's why I go back to that's why I think it's confusing. When I was briefed on how to do it, I looked at the charter, and that made sense because the department heads don't work for us. They work for the city manager, and, you know, as Councilman Brock has mentioned, you know, the language and the finesse of what the relationship is, you know, we're not in a autocratic, our council is not autocratic to the city manager. City manager takes under advisement, requests, and makes decisions based on the right thing with money and availability and the whole 9 yards. And that's what she's entrusted with. She has, the city manager job has many pages within the charter. And on top of that, having a job description is a great equivalence to that. Going back to the charter says, city manager works for a city council, the department heads work for the city manager. I don't want to direct, I think it's confusing when you have a lot of emails going directly to people and it's not coming from the manager, which is the city manager. That's just my opinion. I'd like to see it black and white. People change the roles. I want to see it as predictable as possible and consistent as possible.
And just to go back also to the other points about the contacts with the city manager during normal working hours and the after-hour contacts only for emergencies, how would that get inserted into something like this so that the future person would know that, okay, I'm going to take that job and I'm on call 24 hours a day, and it clearly states I'm only going to get called for emergencies, you know, in the evening, because they make. I know there's people that make decisions based on that. You know, if you're on call 24 hours a day or on beck and call, it's a little bit different. And I just was wondering how we could spell that out in the contract for the future.
Maybe if I use an example of, would you contact the police chief or the fire chief after hours? Unless it was an emergency. Normal business practices, you don't.
Well, the other side of that is, I personally, the way I read that the city manager is on call 24 hours, I believe that that's in instances where the police department had a fatality at 2 in the morning or 1 in the morning in the city, or we had a fire burn down a house, or we had a water main break again at, you know, those are the that 24-hour communication from her department heads is the way I've always interpreted it.
Well, those are circumstances, those are emergencies, those are
But
absolutely.
that's the finesse of the wording that could be within
Yeah,
the outline that we have, the contract. The contract's what's saying the city manager's on call 24 hours a day.
and the police chief and the fire chief is too, as well, you know,
So
in the event
that's
of
their
an emergency.
contract, and all it has to be is, and they're on call at the front line. City manager is its secondary line in support of the front line, in my opinion. Am I wrong in indicating that?
That's how we work.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I always looked at it as like that's telling the person in that job that you may get a call from the fire chief or the lieutenant or the sergeant or poor Ed and Dave and the team, you know.
But today's communication is so quick and fast too. And then as we talk about, you know, you can get a hold of somebody via email, via text or something like that. So again, it goes back to, making the city manager or department head, you know, as we say, aware of a situation.
Yeah, I think
You
there's
know, and
room
then
to
to
approve the contract terms that says, you know, i.e., department heads to, you know, city manager in all emergencies. I don't know. And like I said, I send emails at 12 o'clock at night. My brain starts to work between 10 and 2. And so you've seen them, councilmen. You see my emails. I send them to you. I don't send them. I make sure that in our tier of authority, you two get the information that I'm expressing, and it's up to you to what you guys want to do with it from that point, or not. So.
Well, again, it goes back to, again, expecting a response. If it's not an emergency, you know, just because you send an email at that time, and it doesn't mean that you're expecting that response. And that goes back with the same thing, is that, well, you know, is it, asking yourself the question, is this something that can wait? Can it be held over? Does it have to be immediately? And that's just called professional respect. That's business respect. And every one of you are sitting and you've done business, and you know, you don't continually do business 24/7. You want your time, and the city manager needs time, everybody. So I personally, I'll read an email that's come through, but I didn't then make the decision if I'm going to respond or not. And 9 times out of 10, it's not an emergency. So that's kind of how I approach it. And I'm aware of a situation that'll come through, but I'll decide that this is a working relationship, and I will respond it during working hours.
So to answer your question, Mayor Pro Tem, there's already language started, which is in the contract. I think it can be IE'd and, you know, some examples to kind of, you know, give guidance to that without having to do communication. That part of it in it, I do think that communication is important to be addressed within the body of this, but I don't think you have to, I think we have part of it already established, which is why we're talking about it. It just needs to be expanded upon within the contract of who that is really talking about. 24 hours to her direct reports, that makes sense. To I should say, from the city manager's direct reports, that being the department heads. That's where she, to me, I don't think I'm ever gonna call a city manager at 12 o'clock and talk about a neighbor that's complaining about something. I would call the police, or I'd request them to call the police. I use the ordinance online. I use that all the time. I think it's an important tool. That's no different than, you know, we have these mechanisms within the website. We just need to start using them all and make everybody aware, such as, you know, not to get off topic, but when you have, you know, when you want to be on a committee, you sign up on the online thing, you check what committee or commission you want to be on. And those are important to use. And communication is something I think we can first look at the contract and then kind of look at how I think the job description is. I think it's just in the job description, it's just being able to be receptive to calls, conversations between the hours of X, Y, and Z, communicate and refer to bodies with replies to everybody, kind of meets the mark for communication.
The only thing that I would have to say is your emergency may not be an emergency for them. And that happens to me all the time, is my drivers will text me and they're hyped up and, oh my gosh, the world is ending. And I'm reading it and I'm looking at the pictures and it's really not an emergency. Calm down, everything is cool. It's not a big deal. So if we're going to say emergencies, you know, I agree 100% with you, Alfred. I think that after 5 o'clock, it's got to be something catastrophic that we need to contact the city manager. But I think that we need to figure out it maybe isn't the right word, but we need to know what the emergencies are, you know, like a water main break or, you know, a house is caught on fire. We need to maybe put that in there, that these are the emergencies. I know they're a given, but we all think everything is an emergency. You know, everything is moving at the speed of sound anymore. But I really think we need to look at that too. So.
Mr. Mayor, have we had issues in the past with people inundating? We've talked about this before, and I guess I'm just trying to figure out, has this been an issue in the past that you've gotten lots of calls at? I can't think of one department head or city manager or anyone I've ever tried to contact after hours for something that wasn't an emergency. And I can only speak for myself, but I agree, as the human resource manager said, you know, we're all professionals. I mean, we could designate and define what an emergency is. I think we all kind of understand that. I'm trying to decide where we're trying to get with this discussion, because it seems like we're talking about it a lot, but is it actually a problem that's happening very often?
I think there's just a misunderstanding, or there's just a lack of understanding of, what that means. I think what it is I do my best to make sure, like, recent incidences, we had the shooting at Hike. 2:30 in the morning, I'm on the phone with, the police department, and I'm getting that out to you because, and we know it's gonna end up on Facebook. We know the news cameras are out there. We don't want you to be blindsided by something like that, right? So I know when these gentlemen communicate with me, or Ed communicates with me, we coordinate what we need to make sure council knows. Some stuff is small, right? I don't need to tell you every time somebody's pulled over, or that somebody was speeding, and what's that police car doing? Why are there 7 police cars here? I'm not gonna bother the chief with that. That's everyday things. But I think there is a consistency with what's happening with some of these phone calls. I saw it on Facebook. And what's happening is 24/7, watching Facebook, watching the discussion board, watching all these things, not giving our guys a chance and our gals a chance to look into this. I'm gonna go, what's going on? Why is this happening? Every little thing. All the time. And I don't run the city, and we don't run the city based on Facebook messaging. So yes, it is a problem in the sense of, I think, what constitutes an emergency, what constitutes gossip, what constitutes drama, what constitutes all of that. And it's gotten out of the line of professionalism. To answer your question, yes. Does that help?
Sure,
Yeah,
it does.
I mean, to be blunt, we're gonna try to solve the problem here. I wanna make sure that you understand what's going on.
It does. I didn't think we needed to, so council, stop calling people after 5 o'clock if you read something on Facebook.
Fair point. And that's what I'm saying, though.
Are we talking exclusively about calls, or are we talking about texts? Because texting is talking.
Texting is the same thing, too.
Yes.
I think we all have common sense going back to, I think maybe where the councilman's going, not to put words in your mouth, but we all should understand what an emergency is and what constitutes an emergency, right?
Yes.
And I think that's what Councilman Mahal is trying to say. Where's the problem here? We should all kind of understand that.
And I think it's nice to have, to have an ability to have frankly, we don't have the ability a lot of times, unless we're in a study session, to have open and frank conversations as a group.
Yeah.
We're, kind of sequestered in a way that, you're compartmentalized when we're here together, when we are together. And, this is one of those unique situations where we can have open conversations and look eye to eye and say, everybody on the same page, that here's what an emergency is, and don't abuse it.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's all encompassing, not just even on the phone calls. I think it's just all encompassing on choosing what you're contacting a person for.
Right.
I've been contacted for some really ridiculous things. And things that really are not part of my job. And frankly, that's irritating, and other staff have had that problem too. And so I think what we're just trying to do is create a level of professionalism that we're consistently, raising the bar on how we communicate with one another and the type of communications that we have.
And if I may, and I know, Elise, you have a point to make, I do think that from the aspect of communication, the evidence should be that anybody communicating city manager, that being a text or, an email or whatnot, should include, in my opinion, the mayor and mayor pro tem. That gets peer buy-in to the aspect of the scenario, and when it comes to one of them, I don't know what the rule would be, but I think that if you take it out of the element of one-on-one, then you have peer identification of what happened. And that would be, I would expect that if Mayor Pro Tem is the one that's asking a question, that he would include one other person in the conversation so that there's peer buy-in on the question or concern. Because that becomes the element of, you can't say that you don't know the facts, because 2 other people got the same email. Or text.
To that point, again, an example would be, we don't all work the same schedule either. There may be late nights for somebody, and somebody may send an email or something and ask a question. Typically, what we would do is we would respond with, received, and I'll get back with you tomorrow, But you're not gonna go into answering long, drawn-out questions. I've got it,
Yep.
that common courtesy. But, to your point of copying somebody on it so that it's not just a one-on-one exchange, then you're probably going to think, is this really something that has to be asked?
That's why I think it's important that's more important that if you're, in my opinion, that if you're bringing it to the city manager's attention, there's also a necessity that the peers need to know this, and there should not be one, I'm against the one-on-one, I am. I think that a conversation should always have at least one person in the conversation alternate to the two parties talking, and I'm talking about city business.
And it should be, again, city business.
Yes.
That's absolutely a given.
Thank you.
Question on that, Kevin. For a call, should it be a conference call then, or?
I don't even think that mostly what we're talking about, I went red. I don't think that we're generally talking about phone conversations when you get right down to it. My bet would be it's first text, and then, but it's still possible. To me, it is. It's not without the realm of adding somebody in to call.
Okay.
If it's an emergency, I would hope that the person that's escalating it would want also his or her peers to know that.
Yep.
And
good.
like Lee said, that maybe sometimes when you have to go through that scenario, it's not necessarily, maybe not be an emergency, it's just a priority for a person. That's not an emergency. Priority for a person is not an emergency, in my opinion. I could be wrong, but.
Through the chair.
Yeah.
My thought process on this, first of all, is how often are you calling the city manager? I just don't see a reason to call the city manager. If I need something, I will send an email, and I usually have someone else on it. And if I ever send it at 11 o'clock at night, I'm not expecting a response at 11 o'clock at night. 5 o'clock's cut off, you go home, do your thing. I'm doing mine at home, and this came through my head. Talk to me tomorrow. Usually I'll say, talk to me tomorrow. Because, I don't mind an email after hours. I have clients do it to me all the time. They don't expect me to respond. I'm not going to either. There's a cutoff. But as far as a phone call goes, I would expect that the city manager is taking enough phone calls through the day, and if there's something I can email and get a quick response for, I would rather email. If the city manager wanted to call me and say, I think that's something we should talk about, then fine, feel free to call. But I don't see any reason why me as a council person should call the city manager unless it is an emergency. Just don't get it. So that's my opinion, so.
Yes.
I'm not really sure who this is a question for, but what are business hours for the city manager?
24/7.
As far as an emergency goes,
Yeah,
or non-emergency?
pretty much. I'm always working. I'm always available. I'm always communicating. I probably have opened up Pandora's box myself and created a problem. I am more than willing to admit that, because I don't like to let things lie. I like to make sure things are handled. Because, every day I walk in, I have 50 to 60 new emails every time. I don't like to let things lapse. This job is not what that description says. This
Right.
job is much broader and bigger than what that description says. And so, you're constantly dealing all day long and you're just available all the time. But I am available to this group all the time, 24/7, because they don't contact me unless they absolutely need something, it's an emergency, something like that. That's how we have to work. And I think but the biggest piece, I think, is that, and let's just be honest, I think the communication side is the problem. I think the biggest issue that has been brought to my attention is that the mayor wants to have more communication come through him, and he wants to be able to disseminate communication to you. So I think there's just, I need to understand, the manager needs to understand, let me just say this, let's look at this as the manager role, needs to understand, how is the mayor what's the mayor to communicate with council? When is the manager only to communicate with the mayor? When is the mayor supposed to communicate with council? How is that supposed to work? It's had so many variations in the past. So many different variations in the past. All I'm asking for is to give this person an ability to have a clear understanding, so there's nothing to be confused about on how that communication works. And I think that's the biggest piece right now. What am I supposed to give whoever's in the mayor's position, whether it's Mayor Racy, whoever it may be, what is it that I'm supposed to share with them? How is that supposed to be communicated out? Or should I be talking to all seven? That's the big question in the room right now, that I think council has to solve.
I'm going to refer back to the charter where it says the city manager reports to all seven. It is the simplest and most defined thing within the charter. That's just my opinion.
I agree. I agree with that. And there's also other powers that the mayor has that they can take along with what they're doing, but none of them, being outward portions, like a titular head and being able to represent us in certain circumstances and things like that, does not provide that particular office with special information, a special information role. So I think we should all be aware, because I brought this up once in the past also, if the mayor's not available, then apparently I would be next in line. And then how do you know when you're supposed to do that? And then who do I talk to next? Who do I communicate with next? So if we all get it at the same time, I think that would be the wisest thing to do. And on the opposite side, when we communicate, we have a process by custom and general operating procedures here to carry out that operation when we're communicating to the city manager or to the department heads. But when it's coming from the city manager, I think it's clear that we should all get the information. That's what I feel.
And that's the only thing I've been asking for 6-7 months now. Just give me clarification in writing so that it is clear. Because I don't want to upset the mayor. I also don't want to upset the 6 other council members too. I just want a level playing field and direction on what it is the manager, how they're supposed to communicate. And I think it's helpful for the mayor's position too, because there's been different variations in the past on how that worked. Let's clear it up once and for all.
Can I add something? Again, done a lot of research on this. Come up with a little tidbit. It says it's about communication. Make time for council, manager conversations, and meetings. Clearly define communication expectations. Communicate consistently and equitably. Baseline information to all. Clear guidelines for council staff communications. So in a few short little phrases, it answers it. But again, it goes back to, as the city manager says, there's a little differences in the sense of, is it to the mayor, and the mayor to disseminate it to the council, or is it to the council to all? So that's what council has to make those decisions on how they want that communication for the city manager going forward.
In that case, it would be my recommendation. Here it states, that the serve as a liaison between city staff, the mayor, and city council. There may be some instances where the assistance of the city manager may be needed by the mayor if they're performing some of their special duties. But in general, I believe that for the job description of the city manager, they would serve as a liaison between city staff and the city council, et cetera. Just one portion of it. Were the things that you were reading out, Ms. Lees, they were things that you gathered from your research, right? How would something like that be placed in here so that we can ensure that this is clear to the future city manager when they come on board, that that's how they will communicate?
Well, again, it goes back to, those are some very basic guidelines, and guidelines and policies are not necessarily put into the standard operating procedures, which a job description is more than a standard operating procedure, if you think about it. Going into the hierarchy of what a policy is, and then a procedure, and then your standard operating procedures, where a job description, gives a little more of an overview, because you can't capture everything.
Right.
But I gathered from the conversation, again, that everybody understands the basic business protocol. But it does say, from the research, it says to communicate to all equitably and a baseline communication for everyone. Those are things that I have researched on what our form of governance is it's a council manager governance. So from that, and, but that does reference meetings and it does reference conversations. So you can do all at different times.
Well, and the important thing is that with the Open Meetings Act, is we're not openly responding to an all email scenario. I know there's been conversations in the past, like to do this where you can have conversations, it's in groups of 3 or less when it comes to council, which does not violate the Open Meetings Act. It's just important also that if an email goes out to all 7, that you have to bracket off from that in response. My ethic on that has always been to bracket off from a group email. If I have a question, other than, just saying thank you, is I bracket off to the mayor and mayor pro tem and city manager. That, to me, is the hierarchy. And then from there, it goes based on choice and availability when it comes to an alternate council person. So I think your point's valid. I think it's exactly what we have. It's something that we all have to look at. And to me, when you look at the charter and you kind of interpret the old charter and try to put it into today's world, it still is that communication should be to all 7, and there should be no special favors in lieu of that.
So I think Elise hit it on the head, all members of council, equitably, I think, the communication should be across the
Yeah.
board. That's a very simple line to put.
Yeah.
Very simple, clear that out. If that's the wish of council.
I'd agree with that.
I do too.
I'm all for deciding and coming to a consensus on communication between council and the city manager. I think as far as city manager, council communication, we should leave that up to the city. Every person has their own communication style. We all do. And some are good, some are bad, some are polished and professional, and some are more personal. But I think we should leave that up to the city manager. I have worked for and with city managers in the past who have told me, Matt, my department heads are professionals and specialists in their areas. If you have a question for them, you reach out to them, you ask them their question, you get your answer. If you're not getting your answer, if you're not satisfied with your answer, then you can bring that back to me. I've had other city managers who say, if you're gonna contact my department heads, I wanna be included on that. None of them are right, none of them are wrong. They all kind of match everybody's communication styles and everyone's personality. I'm not for putting in a document, putting all future city managers in the same box and saying, here's how you're going to communicate. I understand communicating equitably with all city council members. That makes perfect sense, at least to me. As far as how future city managers want us to interact with their department heads, that should be up to that individual city manager, because they all have different communication styles and they're all probably gonna have different preferences on that. Some people are gonna say, I don't wanna be bothered with that. You need to talk to the fire chief, talk to the fire chief. Get your answer, work with them. If you're not happy with what you're hearing, then bring me into the conversation. But I think some of it becomes too much, and I'm all for I'm pick up the phone and call kind of guy most of the time anyway if I do need something, and if not, I'm gonna send an email to the person I'm trying to communicate with and get an answer back from them. And I'll do it during business hours, and if it's not during business hours, I'm not expecting a reply back. Just my opinions on that.
Any other council? I think there's issues that we have to figure out though too, where our city decided that we elect a mayor, and what is the role of the mayor supposed to be? I mean, that's part of the problem too, is what is the expectations in all these different groups? Like, you have to be part of CWW, but you have to be an elected official in order to be able to vote. And you can have the city manager there to do that, but they're not able to participate the same way for our community. And so there's different things that we do in different roles, that you're in different places. What is the role for the mayor? What's the mayor different than a council person? Because that's what was changed. It was different when the council picked the mayor, and that's the way the charter reads. But now the public decides who the mayor is. And how is that, we never defined that as a community. And unfortunately, that seems to be a continuing thing in this community, that we don't finish the job. We do things part way, and we don't figure out what all the ramifications. We saw that happen with a ward system that didn't work, and now we're going back and having to change that whole thing. That was a horrible thing for our community. Because it wasn't thought out. There wasn't language put on a ballot. So what is it? How do you do that? I know that in the past, city manager and I had great communication, and I thought we were clicking and everything was great. We would meet on a regular basis, and we were bouncing things back off on different things. I would know about what was going on the day-to-day side of it more, but you're also trying to, what is the role of the mayor to know of some of those things? Because you're getting asked questions in the public from people, or you're hearing things, and if I'm hearing things, I give that information back to the city manager, whoever that is. And how do you do that? And take me out of the equation. How do we expect the future if we have this the way we set this up? But again, maybe we should go back to where the council elects the mayor. And if we're not gonna fix anything, because that's the way this was originally set up, and then it was the person of their peers, and everybody was a council person that was elevated to that position. But when you have to go and run to be the mayor, what's those expectations? Because we never defined this as a community, which is not really fair to whoever the mayor is, and then people get frustrated with each other. You know, how do you give directive? How do you, when you want to have somebody comes to you and they want to meet with the city. Well, they come to the mayor, because that's how a lot of cities, that's how it works. And then you try to bring it to the city manager to have a meeting. Is that a council decision to have a meeting, or the city managers? I mean, how do we want to, these are issues that come up. You know, what do you do? How do you move forward with certain things? So I think that there's some things that need to be thought about, and how to make everybody feel like you're part of the team of being able to move the city forward. Like I said, I think a periodic meeting between the mayor and the city manager is a good thing, either in person or on Zoom. I think it was very beneficial. I felt over time, but we both were bringing things to the table. Originally, that was something that the city manager was doing with the previous mayor. And then when I became mayor, we started doing those things, and I felt it was very beneficial to be able to temperature what was going on in the whole community, from my perspective and from their perspective, what was going on. And I was translating it to the council members, but this council has changed. I mean, I've changed people in this council. The faces have changed multiple times for me over the years. So, and this is a totally different group of people. And how do we move that forward? It's much different. It's very frustrating for both, in both positions. And I see that happening. How do we, for the future, if I'm not here, when I'm not here, I guess, how do we need to address that piece of this too, as a council, in my opinion. And I'm not sure what that means, but I'm just throwing that out there.
Mayor, if I may?
Yes.
This calls the point to the other standing committee you have, which is items for future ballot initiatives. And the charter, the only way we can move anything on the charter, which is what you're talking about, is the charter. is through a ballot. We bring it to the people and they have a choice on saying yea or nay, and they make the decision on a modification within the charter. I don't know where exactly, I don't know where the language really goes with that specific kind of capacity, because then you have to start looking at where it talks that, goes back to the same thing I've been talking about, which is you have a confusion between the city manager works for the council, and now you want to looking at specific titles and duties and functions of the mayor that's not in there that you're looking for, which is adding a layer of authority, is what I'm hearing you say, is basically,
Well, I know it exists in
mayor,
the past.
mayor tells council, and what I'm kind of hearing is, it's like, you got the city manager that works for the council, and the mayor is an elected position now. It wasn't, and most of the charter is written around appointing a mayor, no different than we do for mayor pro tem. That, it's just not there anymore. So you can take the same language where it says we vote at the first meeting after the election to appoint a mayor pro tem. I guess they used to have a party and, and would appoint mayor and probably appoint mayor pro tem based on the 7 on council. It's not as easy as just injecting additional authority into it, because you have to look at the whole scope of the charter. And by moving one puzzle, it reminds me of that puzzle that has one piece missing, and it's so frustrating. You're trying to make the diagram, the picture. Sometimes you move it for good intentions, but you really impact other things. So it's not an easy move. And I've had my opinions on this. I've expressed my opinions to you on this matter. But I think this is something that the charter committee needs to look at and decide on if this is something that's a viable option. Is this a priority to have on the ballot? We are going into a presidential election. It's our one best way of getting the most people coming out to vote on things. I think there are a lot of things within the charter that could be looked at from a high level and could be extracted at an immediate level and put on the ballot. It's for the committee to bring it to us and kind of go from there.
And to your point, that's why the mayor was always every 2 years, and then that wasn't changed. And then we just had that changed in the election in the past. That was always a 2-year term, because every 2 years, when the council changed 3 people, they would reelect who the mayor was, who the mayor pro tem was. And that was never fixed. I mean, they never put the language, obviously, into the, I don't know what the language was when they brought it. They just electing a mayor, what that meant. And I know, I've talked to, Commissioner Haydes before, but about different things, and he was always at the table with Ford Motor Company. Whatever the thing was, the mayor was part of those discussions. And so the mayor was the one that was representing this body as the mayor. And what I feel is, right now, I'm not part of that piece, because we don't, everybody's confused about how we should talk and move forward. And with a new city manager, whoever that would be, you need to be able to, people are expecting that. And trying to do the best to your ability, whoever the mayor is, what is what is that? It's something that needs to be looked at by the committee, and how to best serve this community, because it's very frustrating.
Through the chair, we rewrote the master plan for our city. I was part of that in the planning commission, and we all agreed to rewrite the master plan. I'm new to council, so please forgive me if this sounds crazy, but why can't we, with the committee, look through the charter and look through the changes that we may need to make to bring that charter into 2023.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't understand, and maybe it's just me and my ignorance, we'll call it, not understanding why this hasn't been an issue that was brought forth when we first elected a mayor, Al Haddis. That should have been looked at with the wording and the language. And I don't know what that encompasses, but in my opinion, I think that charter needs to be looked at. And not saying losing our roots, but I think we need to bring the language of the charter into 2023. That's just my opinion.
I don't disagree. I mean, the charter's a mess. I mean, there's all sorts of things that contradict itself. It's not state law. It's very difficult to follow. You read one thing and over here, it's actually legal to do it now. I mean, there's things about don't hire handicapped people. I mean, it's just, and I think even who we hire is all gender males and not females, based on how they wrote it, which is wrong. There's all sorts of problems with the charter, and ideally, the way to do it is a charter committee, which is a huge undertaking and cost, and we've never, that's been we had been talking about that, and then COVID hit.
And a planned expense at that too.
And it's a major expense, and it can change, there's methods. I mean, you can put together a charter committee of people that work on the charter, and then they put the framework together, and then they have to run to be actually members to have it go on a ballot. They first have to be elected. But it could be a appointed committee, do the bones of what we feel like it needs to be done, and then hand it off to a committee that has to be then elected, is my understanding.
So I've pretty much been frank and honest and said that most of my career has not been in government, and so I've had to do an awful lot of research of late and looking into different areas, what I can find. So regardless of the charter, with all due respect, that there are some significant concerns that need to be addressed in the charter. But it really comes back down to the type of governance. There's council manager, there's mayor manager. So the charter is clear that this government is council manager. And what I have researched is that the council is the legislative branch of the government. The city manager, whomever that is going to be, is the administrative or the executive head. And the judicial, then there's a judicial side, which is the judge. So with that being stated, it does define that there's roles of the mayor, and the mayor is really, truly the champion and the lead of the council. And the recommendations are that you meet with the council regularly. You meet with your team, that council, and then you take any of those initiatives and goals from the council, the body of 7, to the administrative role. And then you work from there, because then the whole council's initiatives and goals and policies and guidelines are directed to the city manager. And from what I've looked at in that same type of government, most governments in the municipal areas, it's very common. It started, I can give you the history or whatever, but this has been the more common type of council manager government in it. So yes, and many of them have the mayor is elected and the mayor is appointed. But it boils down to is that the council sets the guidelines and the policies and directs the city manager. So it's clear, but then, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but the authority lies with your council, that you meet with your council and you lead the council is really where and that does include meeting with, representing the city in many roles as well. But again, it's legislative, administrative, and judicial. So if that helps, I don't know.
That certainly does, and I agree with that from my research and the things that I've been reading. And I look forward to sharing that with the rest of the council. I think you'll find it very interesting to look at that. I think, though, that we also need to revisit just for a bit here what we were talking about with how the city manager will communicate with the council, and I think that we draw out of that. As for the charter and things like that, there are sample charters that from the MME, the MML, the ICMA, and also the NCL or NLC, I can't remember which order. Thank you. The NLC, which is also a highly respected organization with a very long history as well, right? So they got samples in there, and you'll probably be able to find the links yourself, but I'll send you a list so that you could see them too, Mr. Quarles and everybody. And so that's for the charter, for a sample charter, if you wanted to rework it, you know? And that is a separate thing, and I think it's important, though, that we make it clear that the city manager and the future city manager communicates whatever information they have for us to the whole team as the council. That's what I have to say.
I have a document that I'm gonna end up, I gotta find it. It's something that the city manager shared with me. It's, and I probably should have shared it, I shared it with Mayor Pro Tem Porter, but we never got anywhere further than that. It was key ingredients for success and an effective city council-city manager relationship, and it's a 19-page document that I thought was very, very helpful. I think the city manager would agree that she's the one that shared it with me. That was very explained quite a bit too. And this was a guy named Kevin Duggan. He was the ICMA West Coast director that put this together, and I'll share that. Some things, I think most things apply. I mean, that's what you got to also look at. Not everything's exactly our city, you know, and it's a matter of how we want our city to go forward with stuff. So, do we have anything else that we wanted to talk about? Action items, what do we do now?
Under duties and responsibilities, it doesn't have anything about grant writing.
I'm sorry, say that again?
Under duties and responsibilities, there's nothing about grant writing?
Because there wasn't a city manager's responsibility. That was a bonus that we have been receiving.
Is that something we look for with the next city manager?
Can I give you a little layout of what the city manager does now?
Yep.
Okay, compared to what what's in there. Bear with me, I'll try to make this quick because it's late. Other than what's in the charter, lead negotiator for labor contracts, some of that might be in there, but I'm gonna name everything. Lead negotiator for labor contracts. Handles all insurance claims through the Michigan Municipal Risk Management Authority, the city's insurance carrier. Also manages annual MMRMA insurance updates in the portal and any vehicles and licensing and all of that stuff. That happens often. Providing weekly reports to the city council that cover all city departments. The departments send the reports to me, obviously, and then we get them out by Friday at the latest. Serve as the city's chief information officer and manage all forms of communication to the public. Plus, I do assist when needed because I've been asked, not that I requested it. I help with the DD8 page, I help with the Parks and Trails page, I help with the police page. So I also help them as well. If there's something that needs to go up, maybe somebody's not available, but it's very rare on the police page. Write all communications to federal, state, and local officials on behalf of the City of Wayne City Council and research all matters. Assist the city clerk as needed with council agendas and resolutions. Haven't had to do that too much, but I do help her out with resolutions once in a while when we have a lot of things going on. But normally, Tina does a great job with the agenda, so I haven't had to do that for a long time. But I am a backup. Handle all FOIL requests for departments except for the Wayne Police Department. Assist the staff with letters and all other forms of communication. Coordinate, plan, and handle all talking points, plans, and aspects for the Memorial Day and Veterans Day events. Assist as needed with all city-sanctioned events. Manages the City Parks, Trails, and Green Spaces Committee. Responsible for sending biannual fundraising letters for the Wayne Veterans Memorial. And I also help out with the Thanksgiving turkey giveaway as well. Ensure that the city council chambers are prepped for meetings. Provide administration updates at council meetings, and often will include updates, as you know, from the library director and other staff. Hold weekly department head meetings on Thursdays. And that's kind of the list. Committees serve on the Election Commission, Elections Commission per the charter, which requires meetings as needed. I serve on the Property Disposition Committee, manage and oversee the Parks Trails Committee, serve on the Wayne Veterans Memorial Committee, serve as a backup to the mayor on the monthly Conference of Western Wayne meetings if he cannot get it. That's CWW. So you'll see that this has evolved from that. What I want you to, the reason I say these things is because I want you to have, and Elise has the list of everything too, but I want you to be realistic in the fact that, and I do handle grant writing, obviously, as well. But I want you to be realistic in the fact that this job description is probably a lot larger than it was when it was first posted many years ago. And I just want you to really dive into this a little bit and make sure that the next person really understands what the expectations are. Because you don't have a lot of staff to, the reason I took on FOIA is because we didn't have the staffing to do that. The reason I took up all the insurance, we didn't have the staffing to do that. So I've taken on a lot of those responsibilities. It's gonna be up to council whether or not they wanna give those responsibilities or delegate those responsibilities. But I don't think it's a lot to ask a city manager to manage those things. However, in the job description, whatever you decide to do, you want to be really upfront on your expectations right off the bat. So just adding that to that. Does that help, Councilman?
It does.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, if I could just make what you read, is that something that can be made available to us?
Yeah, I will get,
That'd be
I'll
great.
give it to Elise and I'll at least be the
I mean,
person to
because I think
shuffle it
it's
out.
important, you gotta, job descriptions, I've seen them where they're down to the detail.
Yeah.
When the type A does the job description, but when you do something that's on the more, realistic aspect, it's more broad and vague, but I do think that, your points that you've provided are important to implement in this, to look at and reference this and kind of make it a living document.
I agree, and I think in your interview process, the one thing that you really want to ask is if you're going to make sure, if you're going to have this responsibilities given to the manager as well, that, they feel comfortable or they have some background or they're willing to take the training to do it. Because you'll find some may not, you know what I mean? Some may want to come in and just run the day-to-day. They may not be used to this type of work. There's a lot of work that goes into this. So when you ask me about my hours, Councilman Clareman, they're big. So, but I enjoy doing all of this. I enjoy it because there's really no other person to pass it along to. They're all, so busy, but they're also very helpful too. So I just want to make sure that the expectations in the job description are realistic to what the job is today.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Lisa, didn't they also in the past too, just to add a point to your job, that there was also an executive secretary that handled the day-to-day operations for the city manager as well. They need to take that into account as well, that a lot of the positions that are out there, whether it's her department, our department, any, they're doing two roles a lot of the time when there's, the staffing levels are not there anymore. So you have to be cognizant of that as well. When you're hiring a city manager, what you're getting today, you might not get in the future. So just keep that in mind.
That is true. And I even had an assistant since I've been here for
I also want to say that from what I've read and I'm learning to understand, the role of a city manager in a manager council organization, being that person is often the anchor throughout the years or whatever decades that they're carrying out their work, is that they make clear to the council, as our city manager currently has done, what their duties are, the information that they'll need to do their work, help them collect it and teach them how to do it so that they can go on to the next level in their own legislative career to serve the people of the city of Wayne, and that's what our city manager has done. And that's not in here, so we'll need to ensure that whoever comes along next is aware that they are in a manager council operation, and we may need to coach them a little bit at the beginning to get them started off, but that is part of that duty, and our city manager has fulfilled that. Thank you.
I will tell you, have great department heads here that will help make that transition pretty seamless. And any one of them could sit in my position at this point and handle most of this stuff. So you do have a wealth of knowledge between all of these individuals. They're fantastic. Yeah, I agree. Chief agrees.
If I can, Elise, you're gonna send me send the city council the best description of our current government management style that you found?
Yes, I'll send you all of the information that
Thank you.
I provided.
I lost my my agenda and all these
Looking
papers.
for an agenda.
Yes. Okay, are we good for tonight?
The only thing I wanted to cover, and I'm not sure when the appropriate time to cover it is, but I think we should consider scheduling a special meeting to convene so that we can discuss some of the recent developments and how we want to move forward. And I am not comfortable waiting for the next council meeting. I think it's almost 2 weeks away. I would move to schedule a meeting Thursday night. I know we need 24 hours, but to get something scheduled so that we can move forward and, well, first decide how we want to move forward and then move forward. But I don't think waiting is a great option right now.
We're still trying to get our arms around some things. I know that I don't want to get too far in the weeds with this because we do need to schedule another meeting. Underneath, I think it was your charters, there's information for everybody to review about the MML. And
Let me see.
so there's a whole booklet here. I don't know what council's availability is this week. Either this week or next week. Beginning next week, I do think we need to meet before the next council meeting and have some discussion, but it's a matter of trying to get as much information together for the council to discuss too.
Any Tuesday works for me.
I'm available Thursday, the 24th.
It's two of us.
Do you
I
count?
can do it if I have to. I'll cancel what I have.
Do you guys want to meet this week or next week?
I'm busy, man.
I can do next week. If everybody wants to meet Thursday, I'll change my plans. If they want to meet Thursday, I'll change my plans.
I'd rather do Thursday than next Tuesday.
Yeah, I'm scheduled to be out of town next week.
Might do both. Sorry.
So what I need to have happen, because we can't take action in this council meeting, I need a council person to send an email to Tina and then have a second person
Excuse me, Mayor, that needs to come from you.
for me.
Written request from the mayor.
Okay.
Well, any two members as well, but it can come
So I
from
can just
written
send you,
request.
I'll just send you an email.
Charter, section 7.2.
So, okay. So I'll send you an email for the 24th.
I just
Can we
need
do it at
written,
6
I need the
o'clock?
written request
Yeah.
for the special meeting.
I'll send you a written request.
Can we do it at 6?
Yes. I mean,
Meetings can be any time between 6 and 8 p.m.
Perfect.
yeah. I mean, I guess we should also ask, are we expecting staff to be here or, how much staff does council expect? Because we've already had staff here
I
tonight.
should ask if I could be excused from that one, because it's really more relevant towards the council's decision now.
Okay.
I think, well, I don't know, the clerk is usually, the person present.
What is the council expecting to, is it just us?
Would we be at a special meeting also when this particular topic, legal, Mr. Bosnick available for that same special meeting?
Yeah, what,
They should have,
can we,
yeah.
can we pick a day this week and a day for next week? And let me talk to the attorney to just see what's available. Because, I mean, I want to make sure that we're prepared to talk to the council too.
I think Councilman Mahon said he's out next week.
Are you
Yeah,
done?
the 24th works fine with me. It sounds like we have a consensus on the 24th. I don't think we need all the department heads. Maybe if the
Well, we need to
HR
talk to
director
the
wanted to
attorney.
be here,
Also legal.
We're waiting to see if we can get the attorney.
and the attorney, I'm sure we can, the attorney's office, I'm sure will accommodate us on, if we don't get Mr. Bosnick with having somebody here.
We just have to, I need to let them know because it's 2 days away.
And we don't, if we can't have him, we can do it without him and direct any questions we have for him to him later.
That's Thursday and then next Tuesday if we need to.
Yeah.
What am I hearing? Thursday or Tuesday?
Is that fine with everybody? Is it as an option?
Thursday
I'm
or
open
possibly
on,
Tuesday.
I can make time. I'm good.
Yeah, I will too.
Are you fine? Okay. Okay, you can make that work?
I can make Thursday work.
You can make Thursday, Tuesdays, it would be a problem for you?
How about next Thursday?
still out of town next Thursday.
All right, so
So
with,
you're out of town next week, period. So if it's not
Sunday
Thursday,
through
you can't
Thursday.
do.
Friday I could.
And this is gonna be filled with people. We have an event here on Friday.
so basically we finish everything this Thursday.
I'll see what we can come up with. Okay.
And Lisa, can we get the list from you by then?
Yeah, I'll get everything to Elise.
Thank you.
You're welcome, no problem.
Okay.
Would you like the same format set up like this, so you can talk together with each other?
It's wonderful.
Yeah, you can just,
Yep.
can we just
Yeah,
leave it?
the tablecloths are a little more higher. So we'll leave this up then.
Okay.
Where are we at?
Go ahead and move the agenda.
Are we on to public
Yes.
questions not on the agenda?
That would be,
Ready to move?
yes, please.
Public questions regarding items not on the agenda. Public comment is conducted in accordance with local, state, and federal laws. Each public comment is limited to 3 minutes, which will begin when the speaker approaches the podium unless modified by a majority vote of city council. Public comment shall not be disruptive nor contain any profanity, racial, ethnic, religious, sexual, or national origin slurs or overtones. Public comment shall not contain defaming or slanderous personal attacks. All public comments shall be directed to city council. The city council will not respond during public comments. Any violation of public comment procedure shall constitute a breach of the peace. If a member of the public engages in such a breach of the peace, they may be ordered to be seated immediately or removed from the meeting by the chairperson of that meeting.
Okay, any public comments this evening? Any public comment? Seeing none?
Comments from members of city council.
Councilman Quarles?
I just think that we made strides tonight, and I'm really glad that I'm able to talk to everybody on council, and I'm learning. And, so, again, please forgive my ignorance when I say something ignorant. I'm just learning. So with that, I'll pass.
Okay. I'm gonna, just so it doesn't get said before, I'm gonna just say something before we go to everybody else's. I just wanna let the public know that, today, the council is in receipt of the city manager's resignation effective September 20th, and that the council will take formal action in response to the resignation at the next regular, meeting in September. We're gonna have a meeting talking about stuff, but I don't know if everybody understood what was talked about. I just wanna make sure everybody, understands what we're dealing with, because weren't very clear about that. Councilman Dowd? Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. I love having this opportunity to sit together and not have to be limited by conversation that we do in our regular business meetings. I'm a big fan of having more of these type of, I call them lunch and learns, or cookies and learns, because I think it helps to bring us together as seven and understand each other where we're not together, and that's fine. Everybody's allowed their opinions and their values, and the important thing on that is that we have to continually strive to respect each other's opinions, values, even if you don't agree with them. It's still an individual's opinion and value, and it's one of the greatest things about being an American. And I think that we need to kind of plan these kind of things. I am upset and saddened to hear the news that we all received on council. We will get through this, and as a group and as a community, and we'll go through the process as necessary. And I have a great deal of respect for Lisa as city manager. I think I've tried really hard to convey that in a way that is fair and honest and predictable. That's how I operate. So with that, I'll pass.
Okay. Thank you. Councilman Clareman?
Just gonna echo what Don and Kevin said, and I'm gonna pass.
Okay. Councilman Mahalan?
I'll make it very quick, just to go over just briefly what we talked about tonight. I think really a good next step for us is to prioritize. We did a lot of discussing tonight. We didn't get about a third through the list. We've got a long ways to go. I think we really need to focus on prioritizing what we want to do. I think we'd probably like to do everything on this list at the same time. But we talked about having a committee to talk about the pension obligations, a committee to talk about the structural deficit, a committee to review the charter. I think we're going to have to, at some point, skinny this list down and make some decisions on what our top priorities are and where we really want to focus our attention. And I would hope that we would focus on that. And that's it. Thank you.
Councilwoman,
I'll pass, let's go.
Mayor Pro Tem?
I also was not pleased with the news you heard today about the departure of the city manager. We'll talk about that, I suppose, in future meetings. Just wanted to express that quickly. I also wanted to bring out the fact that this is a lot of work, and this work needs to be done because the city is growing and the people depend on us to provide them with safety, security, and a sense of well-being in their community. We need to encourage them to participate in our government and become a part of it. And I think that's become very clear right now with just the 3 committees that we were discussing a little earlier. There's a big place for them to play in it. We need to expect them to play in it, and we need to find a way to get them to join in it. And that's what I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you. I, very saddened to lose our city manager. I'm not going to go into great detail tonight. I think we'll talk about that at a future meeting, but she has been a tremendous asset to this community and is going to be greatly missed, I know, by everyone. And I'm very happy for whatever she has chosen to do. I think the world of our city manager. I think she's an amazing person, and I just hope that she can move forward and be happy. And I also wanted to, before the council meeting, or before this study session, just going to briefly say something. I'll speak on this at the meeting if it comes up at the next meeting, but just want to, there's an email that everybody received from our MMR attorney, so please take a look at that. I'm just going to say something so that people, because this has been out on social media, I just want to say that this is a matter, and it's referring to the lawsuits with the city, and if you see it on social media, that this is a matter that it's currently being litigated. Therefore, the city's not going to respond to any inquiries about the case. Further, this case will not be decided in the public court of opinion, but rather in a court of law. And take a look at your emails. With that, can I entertain a motion to adjourn?
Motion, Clearman?
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.